Chapter 1911. There were god domains wrapped around those stones. At this moment, as if they were being summoned by some kind of power, these god domains surged out from the dusty stones and connected with each other. The dots connected to form a line. The lines connected to form a surface. Above the black sky, these seemingly messy and scattered divine domains began to silently condense. Individually, none of the god domains unleashed by these stones could be considered powerful. In fact, after 10,000 years, these powerful god domains, which once belonged to countless powerful cultivators, were only left with the last remnants of power. These powers might be insignificant. These god domains might not be a concern. However, when they gathered together, the layers of power accumulated into a shockingly vast pressure. The sky collapsed, and the entire peach blossom dock fell into a long night. However, there were still stars twinkling in the night sky, emitting a lustrous glow. The god domains of countless stones connected with each other, forming a brilliant and flexible net. The most dazzling thing was the center of the net, which was a ball of brilliant and gorgeous light. It was as if a breeze was blowing, gently lifting up this huge net. In an instant, the sound of surging tides could be heard. Whoosh! Abundant heaven and earth energy surged along with it. Even the huge ball of light seemed to be affected. It swayed back and forth in the huge net that rose and fell. Everyone in Peach Blossom Dock looked at this scene in a daze. That was someone shook the god-destroying tribulation. However, at this moment, who else could do this other than Chu Luyue, who was in the middle of it? This absurd and crazy thought surged in the minds of countless people, but they forcefully suppressed it. Impossible! The terrifying energy of the god-destroying tribulation was something that even the Nan family's venerable god expert could not resist. Let alone Chu Luyue, who was merely a god expert. Countless people held their breaths. The entire Peach Blossom Dock seemed to have quieted down. At this moment, every pair of eyes was looking at that brilliant ball of light. It swayed gently, and the power on it seemed to be constantly being reduced. The surrounding god domains were madly devouring its power. Streams of light of various colors flew and surged rapidly in the night sky, as if they were weaving a beautiful piece of silk. She's crazy. How dare she snatch the power of the god-destroying tribulation? Luoyin finally could not help but exclaim in shock. He, who had always kept a poker face, couldn't control himself at this moment. His face was full of shock. Previously, when they had obtained the flowing cloud flying diagram, they had already retreated far away. However, from where he stood, he could still clearly see the situation on Chu Luyue's side. On top of that, they were all gods, so they were extremely sensitive to energy fluctuations and changes. Therefore, little Hachi, after watching for a while, originally they were shocked to find that the power of the god-slaying tribulation was being dispersed. She made a grabbing motion in the air before withdrawing her hand. He actually dared to do this. Why are you in such a hurry? This was simply snatching food from a tiger's mouth. Strangely. The elders were also in disbelief. God-destroying has little Hachi been acting strangely in the past 2 days? Time to dodge. But Shifeng swore to the heavens. Actually had the guts. No, there really isn't. Could it be that she wanted to fight against that we are most concerned with her mortal body? If there's anything, how powerful is the deity annihilation tribulation? After experiencing how could it allow her to be so impudent? Shifeng had already recognized in a breath of cold air. Chu Luyue nodded. He only felt that little Hachi did not look like anything all kinds of scenes then let her never seen in the past half of his life. You've been tired for a long time. Not long after go back and have a good rest. The deity annihilation tribulation suddenly shone brightly. Shifeng's eyes brimmed with tears of joy, and he retreated still again. Cares about me. Run. He nodded vigorously. The remaining 3 elders also sensed that something was amiss. Most of the people outside have been dealt with. Boom. And third brother shattering explosions suddenly came from the sky. I believe that they will recover soon. Firework bloomed in the black night sky. Okay, the deity annihilation tribulation had completely exploded. I'll leave a mountain for you to use. The boundless energy accumulated within it surged out in all directions like a tide. Thank you, master. It covered the sky and covered the earth. Shifeng did not linger and soon left happily. That beautiful light was like a torrential flood that poured down in torrents, looked at Yanqing, destroying everything in its time. It devoured everything. Let's go over together. The vast and deep sky was instantly enveloped by this brilliant color. A better reading experience comes from the barrier in front of him again. However, the power of the deity annihilation tribulation was too strong. It almost didn't stop at all and destroyed his barrier. 1922. In a moment of desperation, responded. Sanson also hurriedly attacked. In the
A blue
beginning,
flame
His
instantly
Highness
formed
had
into
planned
a
to go
ball,
with them,
encircling
he didn't
the
know
figures
why,
of the few
but he
people
suddenly
within
asked him to clean
the
up the
energy
place
rushed
first.
over.
If
And
His
the round
Highness
ball
really
quickly
had such a
dodged to the
plan,
side,
he would have said it
narrowly avoiding
earlier,
it,
and would not
the edge
have
of the
suddenly
round
brought
ball
it up
brushed
halfway.
past a ray of
Yen
colorful
Qing took
flowing
a
light,
quick glance at His
giving off a
Highness.
piercing
His
chi-la
Highness
sound.
was still as handsome
Sanson
as
suddenly
ever.
spat out a
He was
mouthful
calm
of
and
blood.
collected.
The others
And there was
hurriedly
even a
went
faint
forward
smile on his
and
face.
injected their power
Since you
into
are doesn't
Sanson's
mind,
body.
then listen to
Only
you
then
were.
did Sanson's
Yen Qing was
expression become
speechless.
slightly better.
What was His
But
Highness's
at this
faint
time,
for?
he couldn't care
However,
about that.
His Highness's
He only
thoughts
took a
had
deep
always been
breath
hard to grasp,
and hurriedly raised
Yen
his head
Qing
to
only
look in the
thought for a
direction
moment,
of Chu Luyue,
and then quickly withdrew her
Master.
thoughts.
It was
He
a pity that
respectfully
the area
followed
was
behind the
covered
two
by
of them,
thousands of rays
but the
of light,
scene just now
and they
suddenly
couldn't see
flashed
anything
through
at
his
all.
mind.
As
He
for
heard
the
that
people in
Shifang
Peach
and Little
Blossom Dark
Hachi
City
had gone out
they
of
had
the
also
city to
sunk
deal
into
with
a
those
deep
plants
panic.
and
They
medicinal
watched
herbs
as
these
the
few
flowing
days.
light rushed to the
It
top
seemed
of
that it was
Peach
indeed
Blossom
quite
Dark City
tiring
walls
previously.
like water. He had
His
heard some
brilliant
news
light
about
was
the
so
13
bright,
new guards,
as if
and
it had
knew
gathered the
that
world's
each of them
most moving and
specialized
rich
in different
colors,
areas,
causing one's
Shifang
heart to
usually
waver.
liked to grow vegetables. In fact,
However, at
he was
this
very
moment,
familiar with
no
the
one was in the
geography
mood
of the
to admire
mountains
this
and rivers.
magnificent and
He also
shocking
knew how to
scene,
plan and
because
deal
they were
with the
very
messy
clear
mountain
that once
forest.
this flowing light
Little
fell like a
Hachi,
waterfall,
on the other hand,
the
was fond
entire
of
Peach
alchemy.
Blossom Dark City
However,
would be
she was
destroyed,
different from
and
the
they
average
too would cease
celestial
to
physician.
exist.
She
The
preferred
atmosphere
to
was
ponder
cold
over
and
strange
stagnant.
herbs and
Father,
prescriptions.
are we going
If
to
the
die?
two of them worked together,
The little girl,
they would
who was
be able
quite
to help
excited
Sanson
about her
solve a
discovery,
lot of problems.
finally realized
regarding
that
the
something was
rebuilding of
wrong
the
and
Peach
asked
Blossom
timidly.
Dock.
His
Her
Highness
father
had
hugged
made
her
it
tightly.
clear from the start,
Darling, don't
that he
be
did
afraid.
not need their help.
Father is here.
Yen Qing had been a
Duan
little
Qing's
worried at
heart
first,
seemed to be tightly
however,
gripped by something.
after a few
and
days,
he couldn't breathe.
he was surprised to find that the
suddenly
13
came from
guards
behind
were
him.
indeed able to
He turned
handle
back
these
to look.
matters in
The
an
person
orderly
who
manner.
came was Yen Qing.
It could even be said that he
Yen.
was outstanding.
Duan Qingchuan was about to speak when he saw Yen Qing shake his head
but they were
slightly,
all very
and his
useful when
gaze
they
was fixed
encountered
on
a
the
real
sky.
problem.
Duan
This made
Qingchuan
Yen
seemed to
Qing
have
have a whole new level of
and
respect
turned his
for
head to look
Chu
again.
Luyue, and the
A
13
tall and
new
slender
sect.
white figure
At this moment,
had appeared in front
Chu
of the
Luyue
stream
suddenly
of light
turned around
without
and
anyone
glanced at
noticing.
Yen Qing.
Rong
Yen
Xiu
Qing
crossed
was
his hands
quick-witted.
in front of him.
She immediately
and two
noticed
balls
and
of
looked
flames
up.
were burning
Your
in the
Highness,
depths of his deep
Chu
phoenix
Luyue
eyes.
looked at him suspiciously,
One was bright gold,
as if he was
the
thinking
other was
about
dark.
something.
A
Yen
huge
Qing was
golden bounded
confused.
domain suddenly
Chu Luyue
appeared.
knew Little Hachi
It
very
seemed that
well.
it had blocked all
She
the
had
flowing
always been
light.
very concerned
the
about
torrent
her
didn't
image,
stop and rushed
but when
forward.
it came to serious
Just
matters,
as the two forces
she
were
didn't
about
care
to
about
collide,
these things.
a clear
But
voice
this
suddenly
time,
came.
At first,
Stop.
she was very normal.
Along with this voice,
Later,
the
it
endless
seemed that
colorful
after she
flowing
heard Rong
light
Xiu
that
call
was
Yen
surging
Qing,
forward actually
her
stopped
attitude
in
suddenly
front of the
changed.
golden bounded
Yen
domain.
Qing,
Our
everyone
family
was little
stunned
Hachi has a
and
bad
subconsciously
temper,
looked
but
towards
she is
the
very
direction
kind
of the voice
and is a good girl.
They saw an
If she
exquisite
offended
figure
you
standing in the air.
I'll apologize
She
to
held
you
a
on her
shield in
behalf.
front of her with both
Chu
hands.
Luyue knew that little
Everyone
Hachi
couldn't see her
had been
face
looking for trouble
and could
with
only
Yen
see a
Qing
head
some
of
time
black hair
ago.
fluttering in the wind. On the shield, there was a glimmer of
However,
light. Little
Clang.
Hachi always
She
knew
suddenly
her limits,
smashed the
so
shield
she
down
didn't bother
heavily
too much.
beneath her feet.
Moreover, there had been a
3,000
lot of
divine
things going
domains
on
suddenly
during this
moved.
period of time.
It was as if a
So
mighty
she had
pressure
forgotten
from
about
ancient
it.
times
Now
was
that he
surging
saw
in
their
all
reactions,
directions.
he suddenly
Digression.
remembered. Maybe they really
it took
had
a lot of energy
misunderstanding
and effort to write
Yen
this part,
Qing immediately
but I
cupped
finally
his hands.
finished it.
Princess
Updated
consort,
at
you're
6 o'clock
exaggerating.
p.m.
Miss
Mobile
Ada's very
users,
good. It's
please
all my
browse
fault.
for a better
Offended
reading
her.
experience from
Yen
Love
Qing
Network.
thought for a moment and swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. It's all my fault
Chapter
for my
1912.
inappropriate words.
The gorgeous
and offending
flowing
little
light
Hachi
that almost covered
he
the
still
entire
felt
sky
that it wasn't
finally
very
began
honorable
to
to
collapse
say that he had
inch by
misunderstood
inch
her.
after a short
Therefore,
pause.
he only
The
briefly
God-destroying
mentioned it.
tribulation
Chu
shattered
Luyue
into
immediately
countless
felt
pieces of
relieved when
starlight
she heard him say
and
that.
fell into the
Yen
3,000
Qing's
God
personality
domains
was
that
always
filled the
to say
sky.
what he wanted
It
to
was
say.
like a river of
It
stars
seemed that it was
splashing
really
down,
not a big deal.
and countless
But
brilliant
for some
lights
reason,
flew up.
she
The
still
strong
felt that it
wind
was a
blew,
little strange,
and the woman's
its
red
dress
dress
ahead.
fluttered.
All
All
kinds
kinds
of
of
beautiful
beautiful
and
and
brilliant
brilliant
lights flickered
Chu
around
Luyue
her.
came back back to
but
her
they were not
senses,
as bright as
put
her.
away these messy
the scene
thoughts,
seemed to be
and looked
frozen
ahead.
but she
Let's
was
go and take a
1,000
look.
times more intense than the
The
faint
U
ink.
Residence's dungeon
All of a
had
sudden,
been there since
it
the
seemed to
beginning.
give people an
After
illusion.
Sanson bought
The
this
sky
place,
fell and
he
the earth
renovated
cracked,
it,
and
including
she was
the
the only
dungeon.
god.
According
Countless
to him,
people looked
everything
up with
he
dazed
prepared for his
expressions,
master had
and
to
this
be the
scene was
best.
forever engraved
So,
in their
the
hearts.
dungeon's defensive
No matter
strength
how much time
was
had
also
passed,
far beyond
there
ordinary
would always
people's
be people
imagination.
who would remember
Just the great
that there was
mystic
once a
King
woman
Master
whose
level mystic
single-handedly
formations
turned the tide
alone
in
were
such
set
a
up as
dangerous
many as
situation.
6.
She was the one
didn't
who made
ask
the
Sanson
flowing
how
light
he
flow
did it.
backward.
Peach
She was
Blossom
the one
Cove
who
didn't
made the
lack
rushing
all
flow
kinds of
backward.
capable people.
She was the one
Sanson
who
was
truly
able to
relied on
find
her
them
mortal body
and ask
to
them to
withstand
help.
the god-destroying
This was his
tribulation.
ability.
After
The thick
imprisoning
smell of
Luo
blood
Yan
spread
and the others
between her
here,
lips and teeth.
Sanson sent more
Her heart
people
was
to
beating
guard this
violently.
place. Of
as
course,
if it would jump out of her chest at any time.
Chu Luiyue
Her
was
head
so
was
assured
throbbing
was
with
that
pain,
she had already done
and her
something
last
to
string
these
was
people
pulled tight
when she locked
a
them
numb
up.
and dull pain
Although
came
these
from
four
her
people
arms.
were still in the
Sticky
god
dark
realm,
red blood
they
seeped
couldn't
out from
gather
her
the
hands.
origin power in
Chu
their
Luiyue
bodies.
took a deep breath
They were basically
and
no
forced herself
different
to
from
swallow
cripples.
this breath.
The dungeon was very
there
spacious
seemed to be
and
an
empty.
invisible hand
Chu Luiyue
that was plucking
and the
the
others
delicate
passed through
strings
layers
in her
of
body.
checkpoints.
The sound
and
of the
arrived at
zither
the
was
deepest
bleak and
part of the
solemn,
dungeon.
but it
Along
quickly
the
woke
way,
her up.
clear
She raised
footsteps
her eyes
echoed
and
back
looked
and
around.
forth.
What
Making
entered
the
her
entire
eyes was a
dungeon
sea of
seem
brilliant
even more
light.
empty and eerie.
The god-destroying
Before seeing
tribulation
anyone
had collapsed.
Chu Luiyue could
forming
already smell a
countless thick,
brilliant
sweet,
flowing
and fishy
lights
smell
that were rushing
after
back
walking
and
for
forth
a
in the
while.
sky above her.
Yin Qing stopped
and beneath
took
her
charge
feet
of
were the
guarding
3,000
Rong
god
Xiu and
domains
Chu
that were
Luiyue
formed by the
continued walking
stones.
inside.
Chu
The
Luiyue
cells
was
here were
moved
all made
and
of
she
fine
sighed
iron,
softly, and they
the
were
god
all
domains
connected
of the
to each
gods
other.
really
However,
can't be
the four
underestimated.
people of the
In
Nan
the
family
beginning,
were locked
she
in
really
different
had no
places.
other way.
Not
She
only could
finally
they not
chose to
see
try
each
this
other,
method out
they
of
couldn't even
helplessness.
hear each other's
She
voices.
did not dare to have
This
any
was
hope
to
in
make
her
it
heart.
easier to break them
After
down
all,
one by one.
when she brought
Finally,
these stones
the two
back
came
from the
to the door of a
god-destroying
cell.
mound, they did not seem to be
Through
particularly
the bars
powerful.
and barriers,
Although
they could
each
clearly
stone
see the
contained a
scene
god
inside.
domain,
They were
Nan
not
Hongyang,
considered powerful.
Rong Xiu said.
At that time,
Chu Luiyue nodded.
Chu Luiyue also
At this
felt
time,
that they were too clean.
Nan Hongyang was
He
curled
couldn't
up on the
persuade them
ground,
otherwise,
covered in blood,
so he chose
it was
to take them
obvious
away.
that he had suffered
Although
a lot.
these stones were
Anyone who
occasionally
saw him would
mischievous,
find it hard to
most
believe
of the
that he
time
was
they
a
were
god
very
realm
gentle
expert.
and obedient.
Hearing the sound, Nan Hongyang moved
Chu
and looked
Luiyue
up.
had never thought that the
Digression,
first time
7
he used them
o'clock.
to construct
What's
a
more
profound
embarrassing
formation,
than seeing the
it would
person you
erupt
like
with
when
such
you're
a
in a
powerful
mass?
and unparalleled
Mobile users,
power.
please
What
browse for a
surprised her
better
the most
reading
was that
experience
after
from
these
LoveNet.
divine domains fused with each other, the surging battle intent increased exponentially.
Chapter 1923.
She could even feel
Under
an
the dim
unprecedented
candlelight,
and indestructible
Chu Luiyue saw the
determination
bloodstains
from
on
it.
his face.
It was a
and his
madness and
horrified eyes.
persistence that she
Nan
had never
Hongyang's
felt
eyes
before.
widened almost
It was an
subconsciously,
astonishing will that
and
had
he
been
curled
passed
up
down
backward.
from the battlefield
Unfortunately,
10,000
his
years
arms
ago.
and legs had
For
been
a moment,
broken,
Chu
and he
Luiyue
couldn't
even
move at all.
thought that it was a
He could only
god-destroying
wriggle
tribulation.
It looked
Even
like
if
he
it
was in a
was the
sorry
sky,
state.
they could
Chu
completely
Luiyue narrowed
overturn
her
it.
eyes slightly.
At this moment,
Before
a colorful
coming,
stream
she
of
had
light
thought that
suddenly
Yin
flew
Qing
over.
must have used a lot
The
of
13th
means to
Yugar,
pry open
who
Nan
had just calmed
Hongyang's
down,
mouth.
felt
But when
her
she
heart
saw it,
tighten again when
she
she
was
saw
still a
this.
little surprised.
Master, be careful.
She didn't think the scene
Chu
was
Luiyue
bloody
shook
and
her head
cruel,
lightly,
but she was
indicating
surprised
that they
Yin
didn't need to
Qing could
worry.
really leave so
She
many
didn't feel
wounds
any
on Nan
threat from that
Hongyang's
stream
body.
of light.
The physical
On the
strength
contrary,
of a venerable
she even
god
felt a
expert
faint
was
sense
very
of
strong.
inspiration.
Even if
This
Nan
feeling was
Hongyang
very
couldn't use
subtle
the
and
force in his body
indescribable.
now.
However,
He should be very
she knew
resistant.
that it wouldn't hurt her
To be able to beat
Soon,
him up like this,
that stream of
Yin
light
Qing's
flew in
means
front
could
of
be
her.
seen.
As if
Chu Luiyue
subconsciously,
raised her
Chu Luiyue
eyebrows
stretched
slightly.
out a hand.
She was
Her
indeed
hand
Rong
had
Xiu's
suffered a great
confidant.
amount of pressure
To be able to
when
reach
she
her
used
current
the
position,
shield to block
Yin
the
Qing
god-destroying
naturally had her own
tribulation.
strengths.
At this
And
moment,
she was definitely
not
not
as
as badly
simple as she
mutilated.
looked.
Don't
Rong
be
Xiu's
nervous.
phoenix eyes
We're not
darkened
here for you
slightly.
this time.
A trace of
Chu
coldness
Luiyue smiled
flashed across
faintly,
his
her voice
eyes,
gentle.
but it disappeared
this
in
time,
an instant.
in Nan Hongyang's
Immediately
eyes,
after,
she was no
that
different
stream of
from a
light
demon.
flew into Chu
It is
Luiyue's
you.
hand.
Only
the moment
then
it
did Nan
touched her
Hongyang
body,
see clearly that
that
it
stream
wasn't
of
Yin
light
Qing
quickly
who came,
condensed into a
but Rong Xiu
translucent
and
and gorgeous
Luiyue.
soft armor.
But this didn't make
that
him
gently
relax.
covered the back of her
Instead,
hand.
it made him more
That thing was
scared.
only half
He
the size
remembered
of a
clearly
palm.
that the
Its
culprit
shape
who
was
drugged
irregular,
him,
and
but
made
it was
him unable
extremely
to use the
exquisite
force
and
in his body.
luxurious.
Was
A
this
faint
woman
pressure
in
was
front of
emitted
him.
from it.
He was extremely
Chu Luiyue
angry,
was slightly shocked.
but now he was meat on the chopping block.
Soon,
So he
the
didn't
second
dare
stream
to
of
be too
light
presumptuous.
flew in and stuck tightly
He knew
to
that
the
once
first
he provoked
piece of
these
the gorgeous
two,
soft
his
armor.
end would be
At the
100
same
times
time,
more miserable
the
than
wound
now.
that was covered by the
I've
soft
said all I
armor
can say.
began to heal
What
at
else
an
do you want to
astonishing
do?
speed.
Nan
In the blink
Hongyang's
of an
body
eye,
tightened. That
his
shocking
voice
wound
was
quickly
hoarse,
healed
as if
and
it
formed a
contained
scab.
endless anger
Soon
and
that
resentment.
layer of shallow
Perhaps
scar
he was
peeled off
worried
bit
that
by
others
bit.
would hear him.
The wound healed
But he
as if
lowered
it was
his
never
voice
there.
when he spoke.
It didn't look
Chu
like she
Luiyue
had been
sneered.
injured at all.
Don't worry.
This time,
we don't want to do
even
anything.
Chu Liyue was shocked.
We're just here to thank you.
She was a celestial
Her eyes
physician.
were curved.
She
Her
knew
eyes
all
were
too
bright,
well how difficult
and the corners
it was
of
to
her
heal
lips
such
were
an
raised.
injury to its
Her
original
attitude
state.
was sincere.
Moreover,
She
it was done in such a short
time.
time.
With
More and more
Nan
streams of light
testimony,
were flying
they
toward
would
her.
be in an
Just as
invincible
Chu
position
Liyue was filled
if they
with
fell
doubts.
out with the Nan
A wave
family
suddenly
in the
came
future.
from her dantian.
Chu Liyue thought highly of such a meritorious person
and was shocked to find
her
that a
words were like a
small
stab
illusory
to Nan
figure
Hongyang's
had
heart.
appeared in her
His
body
face
without her
instantly
noticing.
turned pale.
It was right under the zither score
since I've already
that
said
had transformed
you,
into water
you can
droplets.
at least give me a quick death.
Chu Liyue raised his
figure was
eyebrows slightly.
transparent.
But its shape and appearance
She didn't
were
know what
exactly
Yin
the
Qing
same
had
as
done
Chu
to push Nan
Liyue's.
Hongyang to this
At this
point.
moment, only
The
when
right
one's
hand
life
of the
was worse than death would
figure
one
was
beg for
shining
death
with a
in
gorgeous
every way
light.
possible.
It was exactly the
Unfortunately,
same as the
Chu
soft
Liyue
armor
didn't plan to
that
do
covered
that.
Chu Liyue's
She shook her
body.
head regretfully.
Chu Liyue was stunned for a moment,
and a bold idea
you haven't
suddenly
said those
came
words
to her
in
mind.
front of the head of
This
the
was
Nan
a divine
family.
body. How can you die?
As soon as this idea
Don't worry.
came to her mind,
We'll send people
it
to take
immediately
good
set
care
off
of you in the
huge
coming
waves in
days.
Chu Liyue's heart.
Man Hongyang
A
trembled
few years
violently
ago,
when she
his
came
eyes
to
were
the
filled
divine
with
ruins
endless fear.
world. If
Although
that was
she
really
was in
the
the
case,
limelight
then
at
he,
Lingxiao College,
no,
she
you.
hadn't cultivated
Chu
a
Liyue
divine
didn't
body
give him a
at that
chance
time.
to argue.
After
She
breaking
waved her
through to
hand
the high
gently
god level
and turned to leave.
she smoothly
Chu
condensed a
Liyue
godly
and Rong
domain.
Xiu ignored
However,
Nanhongyang's
a divine body
behind
was
them,
different from
and
a
his
godly
voice
domain.
soon disappeared.
One had to
Chu
know
Liyue
that
didn't
not
look
every
back.
high god could
She walked all
cultivate
the
a
way.
divine body.
She skipped
There
past
were all
the other
kinds
two
of divine
gods
bodies in
and
the
went
world.
directly to the
In
innermost
Lingxiao
cell.
College,
Chu Liyue
was
had
inside,
read countless
sitting
books
with his
on
cultivating a
door.
divine body.
His situation
She had
was a
tried
little
to do it
different
more
from
than
once.
Nanhongyang's.
However,
there weren't
she
too
didn't
many
know
messy
why she
blood
couldn't
stains in his
succeed.
cell.
She was
And he didn't
extremely
seem to have
talented
been
on the
tortured
path
too
of
much.
cultivation.
He was sitting
She
there
had never
perfectly
encountered
fine.
any obstacles
Chu Liyue
along the
understood
way.
that it was
It
useless
wasn't until
to
she
use
started
all
to
sorts of
cultivate
torture
her
methods
divine
on
body
such a person
that she encountered
had to use
failure
other
after
methods.
failure.
She
Luo
was
Yan,
Nan Su Huai's
Chu Liyue
only
called
disciple.
out. And
Luo
all the
Yan
methods
didn't
of
move at all.
cultivating a divine
He turned
body
a deaf ear
that
to
she
her.
had seen and
Chu
learned
Liyue
were
didn't
absolutely
mind.
outstanding.
She continued.
However,
You should
no
have
matter
known
which
that
method
Nanny's
she
deaf
tried,
had
nothing
nothing
to
to do with us
succeed.
that day, right?
In the end, Luo
Even
Yan
Nan
still
Su
didn't
Huai
respond.
couldn't stand it
Chu
anymore.
Liyue laughed.
At that time,
Actually,
he said that since
this
you've
was the
killed
case,
Nan Yuxing with
it
your
meant
own
that
hands,
she had a divine
from a
body
certain
that
point
should
of view,
belong to her.
you've avenged
Only
the
when
woman
the
you liked,
opportunity
haven't
came,
you?
could
Her
she
words were
cultivate
simple.
it.
As
But
for
it
the
made
other
Luo
divine
Yan turn
bodies,
around abruptly.
she wasn't fated
His
to be with
expression
them,
was very
so
complicated.
there was no need to
Shock,
continue
anger,
trying.
shame,
Chu Liyue
resentment
had always
however,
been skeptical about
these emotions
words.
only flashed
She
through
only
his
thought
eyes
that
for
her
a
master
moment.
was comforting
After
her,
a while,
so
he
she
said
agreed.
coldly, "Since
I
then,
don't know what you're
she
talking
didn't try
about."
to cultivate a
Because
divine
he hadn't
body by
spoken
force.
for a few days,
She never
his voice was
expected
hoarse.
that she would have a
Chu
divine
Liyue
body
looked at
today.
him.
Her
Mobile
eyes were
users,
clear and sharp,
please browse
like
for
a sharp
better
blade
reading
that tore through
experience
his
from
last
Love
layer of
Network.
disguise. You should know very well how Nan Yuxing recovered his Yuan Meridian
Chapter
in
1913.
such a short period of time.
A thought suddenly
and even
flashed
broke
across
through
Chu
to the
Liyue's
supreme
mind.
god level.
This divine
Right?
body was
Even I
formed
can
from the
sense
power
that he
of
has
the
God-destroying
God-destroying
aura on him.
tribulation.
Luo
Even
Yan,
she could not
how
help
could you
but
not
gasp
sense
when
it?
she thought of this.
Luo Yan didn't
Her
say
heart
anything,
was beating violently,
but his hands gradually
a divine
clenched.
body formed by
Every
the
word Chu
God-destroying
Liyue said
tribulation
was like a steel nail that
easy
pierced
to
his
imagine
heart
how
accurately.
powerful it was.
Blood dripped.
Chu Liyue
During this
had
period
imagined
of time,
countless times
we didn't
what
even
kind of
see the
divine
Nan
body
family,
she would cultivate,
let alone do anything
when this
to
day
them.
came. How did
She was
Nanny
shocked
die?
and could not
How did
recover
her
for a long
outstanding
time.
Yuan Meridian
She lowered her
transfer
eyes
to her
slightly.
biological
At this
brother's
moment,
body.
more and more
Luo
beautiful
Yan,
soft
I don't
armor
think you
covered
need me
her
to tell
body.
you the truth.
The divine
right?
body in her
Chu Liyue
dantian was
bent
also
down
slightly
condensing,
leaned forward
it
and
gradually
asked softly,
turned from
"So
transparent
this is
to
how you like
gorgeous."
Nanny?"
Some
Luo
of the
Yan
flowing
gritted
light
his
in the
teeth
sky
and trembled
flew into
slightly.
the 3,000
There
god
seemed to be a
regions.
string in his
Most
mind
of
that
them
was
turned
stretched
into
soft
soft
armor,
Rong
and
Xiu
embedded
suddenly
themselves
said,
around Chu
Luo
Liyue.
Yan.
She
If
closed her
Nanny's
eyes gently
biological mother
and
knows
began
that
to
you have such
cultivate while
feelings
holding
for
her
Nanny,
breath, and
the
let her
power
die
around her
without
flowed
knowing
into
why.
her body
How do you think
continuously.
she will look at
Her
you
aura
when she
was
meets
also
you in the
rising
afterlife?
continuously. Everyone was stunned by what they saw.
Don't forget
there was
that you
dead
are her
silence in
biological
Peach
brother.
Blossom Dock City.
This sentence
Everything
finally
in
made
front
Luo
of them
Yan's
change
expression
quickly.
change abruptly.
They did not even
He
have
suddenly
time to
stood up,
react.
looked at
They were
Rong
facing
Xiu
a
in
life
shock
and death
clenched
crisis
his
a
teeth.
moment ago.
What else
In
do
the
you
blink
know?
of an eye,
Digression.
the crisis was
Today,
over. I saw
the
a
impact
sentence
of this was simply
in the
too
mountains
great.
and rivers of
The
a
little
foreign
girl,
land,
who was
the
held
wind and the
tightly
moon
in
are
her
the
father's
same.
arms, was
Everyone must
confused.
work hard together.
She stretched
Mobile
out her hand
users,
and
please
pointed to the
browse and
sky.
read. She
A
said
better reading
softly,
experience
Daddy,
from
it's
AI.
dawn. Come.
Hearing this, the middle-aged man was stunned. He looked up instinctively. What he saw stunned him on the spot.
Chapter 1924.
Sure enough, a ray of
Hearing
light
Rong
shone
Xiu's
through the
words,
originally
Chu
dark and
Liyue
gloomy
also
sky.
turned around in
Although
shock
it was
and glanced
faint,
at
it
him.
was there.
What did he mean?
Moreover, Luo
That
Yan
ray
was
of light
Nanny's
seemed to be
biological
spreading
mother's
to the
brother.
surroundings.
Nanny
After
and
a
Nan
while,
Yuxing's
he
mother was
finally
called
realized
Yi Dai,
something.
and she
His
was
eyes
also the
widened.
matriarch of the
The
Nan
barrier
family.
of Peach Blossom
It was
Dock
said
is
that she
recovering.
passed away not
There was
long
a clap
after
of
giving
thunder.
birth to Nan Yi.
Everyone was filled
So
with
Nan
shock
Yi
when they
finally
heard
doted on
this.
this daughter very
Many
much.
pairs of eyes
As
looked
for
at the
Luo
sky.
Yan,
Yuan. It had always been rumored that he was a distant relative of Yi Dai. Don't you feel that
because
the wild
he had no
space
family and
turbulence
no one
seems
to
be
rely on?
restrained?
And because
Look,
of his
the
outstanding
mountain
talent,
fire is also
he was
gradually
brought to the Nan
extinguishing,
family and
they were
became
in the
half
middle
a
of
member
it.
of the Nan
They
family.
could feel the changes
All
in
these
the energy
years,
most
Luo
clearly.
Yan had indeed
The
lived
space
up to
that had been
everyone's
crazily
expectations,
squeezing
and
the
contracting
atcultivated
seemed to have
smoothly
suddenly
and broken
stopped
through to
and
become
was
a god-level
gradually returning
expert.
to its original
Coupled with his
state.
relationship
That
with Yi
suffocating
Dai,
pressure
his
also
status
seemed to
in the Nan
quietly
family was
dissipate.
even more
Duan
honorable.
Qingchuan could not
This was
help but
also
mutter
why
in
he
a
took
low
special
voice,
care of Nan
Peach Blossom
and
Doc
Nani
is alive.
But Chu Luoyuan
Yan
never
Qing let out a
expected
long
that Luo
sigh.
Yan was
Her
actually
Highness
Yi Dai's
truly
biological
amazing.
brother.
Actually,
and judging
it wasn't
from
that he
Luo
wasn't
Yan's
worried
reaction,
before.
It was clearly true. Master insisted on not making a move when she understood the hurdle. He only set up a barrier. If that was the case, then before they could be used, like Nanny, the princess consort had already taken care of previously. Gradually, if this matter was known by the world, regained their senses, then his and Nanny's reputation would be completely ruined. Even though Nanny was already dead, Luo Yin was still alive. As soon as his voice fell, once such a bustling street immediately fell into a dead silence. Difficult to wash it off. Everyone had complicated expressions on their faces, while Luo Yin was about to break down in the cell. They more or less had some complaints about directly snapped the last string in his mind. If she had not offended the Black Sword sect and the Nan family, perhaps this crisis would not have occurred. Brother. However, to be precise, after experiencing he was her biological half-brother. They knew very well that the illegitimate son of He Dai's Peach Blossom Doc for so many years because of his identity had been concealed. She was the one who withstood the god-destroying tribulation. No one else knew. She was also the one who saved the people in the city in time. Had already been gone for more than 10 years. This secret had almost been completely sealed in the dust bit by bit. Never to see the light of day again. This was not due to her efforts. He Dai was very good to him. They also knew very well that she was the most innocent one in all of this. Later on, he wanted to take good care of the two conflict were the Black Sword sect. She looked very similar to Yi Dai. And now, everyone was relying on her to survive. How could they have the nerve to blame her for all this? This feeling would quietly change. I don't care about others. He didn't dare to face it, saved and had always buried it deeply. I owe her a debt of gratitude. He had never thought about it too much, and I will repay her kindness. He couldn't figure out how Rongxiu found out. A dark-skinned burly man suddenly spoke with a voice full of energy. Completely vanished. He cupped his fists and saluted in the direction with a crazed expression. In the future, as if he wanted to cut him into pieces. To make things difficult for her. Unfortunately, this kind of attack had no effect on Rongxiu. After a short moment of silence, as usual, all sorts of voices were heard. His handsome and enchanting face was half lit and half dark. My life under the dim light of the lantern. In my heart. In Luo Yan's I heard that the third boss of the Yu residence is one of her people? Hee. I have long wanted to go to the Yu residence to take knows about this. He shouldn't this matter is to tolerate you, right? I will go there. As he spoke, he raised his eyebrows and laughed. Oh, not necessarily. You little brat. After really all, dreaming. Nanny died even if you are willing to go, no matter what, they might not be willing to accept you. He is the one who let Nanny down the most. The Yu residence's vetting is very strict. Have to criticize you? I think I am quite suitable. There was dead silence in the dark and cramped cell. You guys are way too selfish. Chu Luiyue could only hear rapid breathing. I will not join the resident himself against the wall with one hand and covered his chest with the other. I will go down slightly and tread on fire. All kinds of unpleasant and suffocating smells poured into his nose, quickly became but he didn't lively. Feel anything. Duan Qingquan looked at words were like a sharp sword, expression, tearing apart the last layer of disguised glances to numb himself. Yan Qing raised an eyebrow. This was really him. Not arranged by them. Yes, if it wasn't him, it seemed that there were really people who wanted to seek refuge with the biological father of these two people. But thinking about it carefully, it was always been by his side. Sword sect had been destroyed. If he hadn't done it, he would have sensed that something was wrong long ago, in the entire but he didn't do anything. Even if there were some who could compete and cross the sea. After this incident surged and they could not be drowned Luo Yin like a wave. After all, everyone now knew that the real master of the Yu residence was that it might be Nan Yifan in today's battle, but she wasn't sure. Saved the entire Peach Blossom Cove. That was his biological daughter. The pearl in his palm everyone that here owed her their lives since she was young. Who else could have she such an advantage? She still remembered the anger and heartache on Nan Yifan's face fearless strength when he saw that Nan was injured. Admire and that wasn't an act. She was a high also god. Because of this that it was even more unbelievable that he did this with such talent and battle strength. How many people in the world could be on par with her? Since Rongxiu said so, in the Peach Blossom Cove, the strong were respected. It was very likely that he already knew who did it. Battle. Depriving a person of their Yuan meridian expert in the hearts and transferring it to another person's body. Chu Luiyue held her breath and concentrated, energy-consuming. The power of the god-destroying tribulation was gradually being devoured by her. So he definitely didn't do it soft himself. Armor covered her entire body. There weren't many people in the entire divine ruins who had this ability. Soft armor. After a long while, the last ray of light finally landed in between her eyebrows. Chu Luiyue noticed the moment it covered her, which was supporting himself against the wall, scorching heat, was already badly mangled because the force he exerted. What do you want to ask? Maybe it was because I fell sick a while ago, Luo Yin asked and my body was overdrawn. His face was ashen. I have rested a lot in the past few days, had been sucked away and I will try to recover tomorrow. He was dispirited. Thank you for your understanding. At this point, users, he knew that there was nothing he could better reading experience from Love Chu Luiyue looked at each other. Chu Luiyue nodded slightly, then took a step forward and asked, Chapter 1914 instruct you to assassinate let out a clear cry. Luo Yin had achieved the phenomenal success of her divine body because he still had a soft armor covered her body.
It was
but
dazzling.
Rongshio's words
Light poured
completely
down
shattered
from the sky
everything.
and shone on her
The Nan
body,
family,
reflecting
Nan
fragments of
they
sparkling
were all the
light.
culprits who
She
harmed
opened her
Nan Yi.
eyes abruptly.
Furthermore,
A vast
the
and
thoughts that
majestic
he had
aura
hidden so
erupted from her
tightly
body.
had already been discovered
Everyone was
by
in awe.
others. Even though Chu Luyue was only a high deity,
What was the point of
her divine
continuing to
body's
hide?
suppression
He
was
didn't want to live
comparable to her
anymore.
eminences,
And those people
Chu
should all be
Luyue
buried
exhaled
with him.
deeply.
A
As
trace
she
of
felt
madness
the vigorous
gradually
power
surged
surging
from
in her
Luo
body.
Yan's eyes.
Phew, Nan Yifan
So this was
shouldn't
what it
have
felt
the
like
ability
to have a
do so
divine
himself. She looked
Do you
down.
know who he asked to
The
do
peach
it?
blossom dock
Chu
was in a
Luyue
mess.
asked
Tentatively,
The inside of
Luo
the city
Yan
was
closed
still
his
fine.
eyes.
But the
I don't know.
continuous mountain
Back
range
then,
outside the
he had
city
accompanied
was
Nan Yi
almost
to the
completely
Yintian
destroyed.
Tower.
There
After
were
being
ravines
rejected
everywhere,
at the door,
and there were
he had
traces
finally
of fire
persuaded
everywhere.
Nan Yi to go
the
back.
strong smell of
But
blood
the two
filled
of them
the
were
air.
attacked on a
Chu
mountain
Luyue
not
frowned
far from the
slightly.
Yintian Tower.
She was undoubtedly
He had also
partly
fallen into a
responsible
coma
for the
at
peach
that time.
blossom dock's current
And when he
state.
woke up again,
She raised
he
her
was
hand
in the Nan family
and put away the shield
It was
in her
also
hand.
at that time that
Then
he
she
heard
took a
that
step
Nan Yi was
forward.
dead.
The
He
divine
didn't know
domain
what had
under
happened
her
in
feet
between.
rippled lightly.
Chu Luyue
and then
didn't ask
quietly
further.
dissipated.
It seemed
The
that
stones
Luo Yan
withdrew
really
their
didn't
divine
know.
domains,
But since
and
he was
returned
willing
to
to
their
admit
normal
that
grayish
Nan
white
Yifan
appearance,
had instructed
Chu
them to
Luyue
do it
waved
this
her
time,
hand.
it
and
was
the
enough.
stones flew back
It was
to her.
obvious that
The
Nan
stones in
Yifan
front
wouldn't
of her
tell
jumped
anyone
a few
about
times
such a
in front of her,
confidential matter,
as if they were
Chu
eager
Luyue
to be
stretched out his
praised.
hand.
The stones in
That
the
thing
row
is
behind them
useless in your
also
hands
jumped
now,
up and fought
Why
to
don't
be
you give it
first.
to me?
If it
Luo
weren't for
Yan
the
laughed
fact that
at
Chu
first,
Luyue had
but then he
repeatedly taught
understood
them
what
to be
Chu Luyue
obedient,
meant,
and that
she
nobody
wanted the
was
flowing
allowed to
cloud
cut the
flying
cue.
diagram.
It would have
Mobile
been a mess by
users,
now.
please browse and
Looking
read.
at the pile
A
of
better
stones
reading
jumping
experience
around
comes from Love
Chu
Network.
Luyue's lips couldn't help but curl up, and a smile appeared in her eyes.
Good
Chapter
job.
1926.
Hearing the praise,
When the
the
flowing
stones
cloud
were very
flying
happy
diagram was
and jumped
unfolded,
back into her
it was about 30
interspatial
feet
ring.
long.
Everyone
It
was
was blank and
dumbfounded.
shrouded in a layer
Could
of
this
faint
be?
red glow.
Chu Luyue did not
Luyue
care
raised
about
her
them.
eyebrows.
After all,
There's a
they had
restriction
seen
on it.
what they should and should
Rongshio
not see.
laughed. In
After
that
all,
case, there
it's
was
one of the
nothing to
10
hide.
great divine
Also,
artifacts.
she
The
could
Nan
take this
family values
opportunity
it
to
very
let
much.
the people in the
It's
peach
normal
blossom
that there's a
dock owe her
restriction
favor.
on it.
Actually,
Chu Luyue
she didn't
nodded
think
and
too much
carefully
about it
looked
at
at the
first.
scroll in front
But
of
now
her.
that things had
Apart
come
from
to
the
this,
layer of
it was not
restriction
without
on the
benefits.
flowing cloud flying
Most of the
diagram,
energy of the god
she could not
destroying
feel any
tribulation
energy
had been
fluctuations
swallowed
from
by
it.
Chu Luyue
Even
to
if it was
refine his
released,
god body.
it would be difficult
As for the
for
remaining
anyone
portion,
to guess
it
that
had
it was a
fused
divine
into the
artifact.
rocks.
Chu
Luyue
Luyue
thought
could
for a while
clearly
and
feel
sat
that the
up.
divine domain
Rongshio
above
was
was a
much
little
stronger than
reluctant
before,
but he still
this
let
was
go
a
of
pleasant
her
surprise
and helped her put on her
Finally,
coat.
Chu
His
Luyue
slightly
flipped his
calloused
wrist
fingers
and took out an
brushed past
item.
her delicate
The
and
people
smooth
below
shoulder,
watched from afar,
leaving only a
unable
fragrant
to see
scent.
clearly. Chu
What's
Luyue
that
put
in
on
her
her
hand?
clothes and
I
got
don't
off
know.
the bed.
It's too
At
small.
the same time,
It looks like
she
a
waved her
sprout.
hand, and the
Just as
transparent
everyone was
heavenly
puzzled,
square cauldron
they saw
appeared in the
Chu
room.
Luyue gently
She
wave
grabbed
his
the
hand.
flowing cloud
A
flying
verdant leaf
diagram
swayed
and
in
threw
the
it in.
wind.
Then the abundant
transparent
energy between
karmic
heaven
fire
and earth
suddenly
began to
burned.
surge. It instantly swallowed the red scroll.
Rongshio's
The
posture
energy
was
was like a
lazy.
tide.
He
surging
leaned against
violently.
the bed head, and
A
one
ray
of
of
his long
sunlight
legs
shone
bent.
down.
The
In the
quilt slid
distance,
down.
the enchantment
revealing
of
a
the
large
peach
area
blossom
of his
dock
marble-like
began to
chest.
reform. He
Is
tilted
that
his head slightly
Tutian baby?
and looked at it with interest.
Someone murmured in
Chu Luyue
disbelief.
stood beside
Everyone
the heavenly
was
square
shocked.
cauldron
That
and
was a
stared
rare
at it.
treasure.
Her bright and
Luyue even
resplendent
had this.
eyes reflected
Just
the
how
light
many
of the
trump
flames
cards did she
as
have on
dazzling
her?
as the galaxy.
Chu Luyue's
After a
motive
moment,
for summoning
a
the
slight
Tutian
cracking sound
baby
was
was
heard.
simple. Crack.
After all the
Immediately
previous torment,
after,
the
the
layer
void
of
of the
light
peach
that
blossom
enveloped the
dock
red scroll
had collapsed
shattered beyond
ice.
recognition.
Chu Luyue
The energy
raised her
was
hand.
rampaging.
The flowing
and the
cloud
entire
flying
space
diagram
was almost
flew out
completely
again
destroyed.
and landed in her hand.
Even though she had
Whoosh.
successfully
She
passed the
unfolded it
God-destroying
again.
tribulation,
This time,
everything
without the
here still
obstruction
needed
of that
to be
layer
sorted
of
out and
restriction,
organized. She was
the
finally
Tutian
able to
baby
see the
could
true
easily
appearance
control
of
the
this thing
vigorous
clearly.
energy of heaven
She could
and
not
earth.
help but be shocked
Naturally,
and widened
it was
her
the
eyes
perfect
slightly.
choice.
With
The
the
white
result
silk
was as
cloth as the
expected.
base.
With just a
Countless
thought,
strong and
the
bright
Tutian
colors were
baby
spread
began
out
to
and
deal with the
intertwined with
chaotic
each other.
energy. It was
The
like a
enchantment
painting,
of the
but it
peach
wasn't.
blossom dock
It was as
as if someone
reformed.
had accidentally
Compared to
broken
before,
the paintboard
there was a subtle
and spread
difference.
all the colors together.
A faint, beautiful
At first
light
glance,
appeared
it was
on the
messy and
enchantment.
messy. From
But
afar,
there was an indescribable
it looked like
beauty
countless
to it.
colorful light
Chuluiwa
spots
was a
were
little
sprinkled
stunned,
on it, flowing
emitting a
cloud-flying
lustrous glow.
diagram. That was the
that's how it
residual
is.
energy of the
She
God-destroying
subconsciously reached out her
tribulation.
hand.
However,
When her
apart
fingertips
from
touched
looking
it,
different,
she realized
the biggest
that the
difference
pattern on
between
it
this
was
newly
uneven.
formed
No,
enchantment
this is a Xian
and the
formation.
previous one was that it was
Chuluiwa
several
moved
times
closer
stronger
and took
than
a closer
before.
look.
In
Only
fact,
then did he see
the
that
entire
the seemingly
peach blossom
chaotic
dock
colors
had
on the
undergone the
surface were
baptism
actually
of the
all small
God-destroying
profound
tribulation,
formations,
and had
the
been
entire
reborn.
scroll was
All the
divided into
unstable
countless
void
tiny
after it had
areas the
completely
size of a
collapsed
fingernail
relied on the
by
energy of the
transparent threads.
God-destroying
Different
tribulation
Xian
to
formations
rebuild
were drawn
and
on each
become
of these
incomparably
areas.
stable.
abundant energy of heaven and earth.
The patterns were so fine and exquisite, feeling this huge
that it was
and
almost
subtle
impossible to distinguish them clearly.
Deeply in her heart.
Even with Chu Liu's
Destruction
eyesight,
followed by
he still
reconstruction.
couldn't see it clearly.
This was the peach
After
blossom
staring
dock
at
of
the
today.
dazzling, profound formation
Congratulations,
for a
you
while.
are.
She
Rong
suddenly
Xiu
had a
moved
thought
and came to
she
Chu
extended a
Liu's
finger
side
and pointed
handsome
it at
and
a small
charming
area
face was
within the
filled with a
formation.
warm smile.
A trace of
Between
orange
his
and
eyebrows
power was
there was
injected into
undisguised
it.
affection
Immediately
and pride.
after,
This was
a
his
ray of
you are.
light flew out
From the
her
beginning to
fingertip.
the end.
A huge,
He had
profound
insisted on not
formation quickly
interfering.
spread out in
Although
front of
his
her.
heart ached,
A strong
he knew
pressure
that she could
spread
do it.
out from the
As
profound
expected.
formation. This
Chu
huge peach
Liu's
blossom
breathing
dot
stopped,
had completely
and she
become her
immediately
domain
raised
from
her
now
head
on.
to look at the
In this
profound
world,
formation.
there was no
An
one else who
indistinct
could
roar
be
came
compared
from
to
it
her
and lingered in his
She was
ears.
the brightest pearl.
She sucked in a
No
breath
matter
of
where
cold
she
air
was,
and disbelief.
she could blossom in
Four
a myriad
symbols
of
formation.
ways.
This was a
raised her
profound
eyes
formation
and looked
that
into
could
his
only
deep
be
eyes.
constructed by
She
a
also
great
raised the
Qian
corners
King
of her
master.
lips.
She had
With
seen the
just
four
one
symbols
look,
formation's
they could understand
profound
each other's
formation
feelings.
diagram in Lingxiao
She
College
knew that
before.
Rong Xiu was proud
But her
of her
realm
and
wasn't
happy
enough
for
at
her.
that time.
You already thought
So
of
she
this?
only took a few
Chu Liu
glances
asked
and put
with
it
interest.
aside.
But
Rong
at that
Xiu's
time,
smile deepened.
she remembered
The
a part of the
God-destroying
profound
tribulation.
formation.
So
So
when
when
she
she
saw
saw
the
the
profound
profound
formation
he
in
didn't
front of her,
expect it to come
she
so
recognized
quickly.
it at a glance.
And this was just an
In the
inconspicuous
beginning, he
little
didn't
pattern on the
interfere
flowing
because he knew
cloud
that she
flying
was
diagram.
dissatisfied with the Black
Chu
Sword
Liu
sect
looked at the
and
flowing
Nan
cloud
family.
flying diagram
He wanted
again.
to let her fight
A
to her
bold
heart's
conjecture
content
suddenly appeared
and
in
vent
her
her
mind,
dissatisfaction.
causing her heart
But
to
later,
beat faster.
it was indeed
She held her
unexpected.
breath and
Of
lightly
course,
pointed
she
at
was
another
always
area
able
to surprise him. A
The
slight
sky
sound of
gradually
something
brightened.
breaking through the
The
air was
flames in
heard.
various places
Another ray
had
of
already
light
been
spread out.
extinguished.
It was also
Abundant
an
energy
extremely
of complicated
complicated
profound
profound
formation.
The two Tian
Revolving
baby
sky
had an
formation.
extremely vigorous
Chu Liu muttered
vitality.
in shock.
In this kind
This
of
profound
situation,
formation's
it could
level
play
was
a huge
the same
role.
as the four
Chu
symbols
Liu
formation.
glanced out of the corner
She
of
paused
her
for a
eyes.
moment.
Suddenly,
Pursed her lips.
she saw
and
that there
pointed at
seemed
the
to be
third
something
location.
reflecting the
A
clear
brighter
light below.
profound formation.
She focused her
that was
eyes
bigger
and
than
saw
the
that a
previous
lake had
two
appeared in the midst
front
of the
her.
messy mountain
And the pressure
range.
on it was
Obviously
obviously
stronger than the four
surface of
symbols
the lake
formation.
rippled,
And
there
there
were
were piles of
sky
rocks by the
formation.
lake.
This
A
is
stream flowed
Chu
down,
Liu was dazzled
spreading
for a
out into a
moment.
clear and shallow
Lightning
stream.
pattern formation.
Fresh green shoots
a low and
sprouted
pleasant
from the
voice
side
came
of the
from
lake.
behind her.
Chu Liu widened her
turned
eyes
around
slightly
and glanced at
This
Rong
lake
Xiu.
looks
This-
like I've
this
seen
is
it
a great
before.
grandmaster
Suddenly,
level
a
profound
white light
formation
flashed in her mind.
Rong Xiu smiled
Isn't this
faintly
the
and
small
nodded.
space that Sanson
That's
had
right.
previously?
Chu Liu
The
didn't say
barrier above
anything
was
for a
still
while.
there.
Great
From the
grandmaster,
outside,
it
for
still
so
looked
many
like a
years,
lake.
she had
However,
only seen one
a
great
stream
grandmaster
diverged from
level
it,
expert,
and extended
and that
all
was
over
her
the
master,
mountains and
Nan
plains.
Suhuai.
Everywhere
It was also
it passed,
because of this
it was a
identity
scene full
that
of vitality.
Nan Suhuai's position
A faint
in the
fragrance
divine
of
ruins
herbs world
pervaded the
was
air.
extremely high.
Mobile users,
Qian masters
please
were not
browse for a
common,
better reading
and those
experience
of this
from
level
Love
were even
Network.
rarer.
It was unknown how much strength and mental energy was needed to display a great
Chapter
grandmaster
1915.
level profound formation.
Ouch. My baby. Sanson's heart
But
ached
just
when
now,
she saw this.
she had only
Little
used her
Hachi
finger
rolled
to
her
lightly
eyes.
point
What
and
are you
injected
yelling
her
for?
force.
Isn't it
And
just a portion
Chu
of the
Liu could
energy
hear
from
the sound
that
of
small
her heart
space?
beating violently.
This is a good thing
She
for
once
the
again
entire
looked at the
peach blossom
gorgeous
dock
and intense
and our
colors.
master.
There
Don't
were at
delay
least
it.
thousands of profound
Sanson's cheeks
formations
twitched
on
as
it.
she felt wronged.
And any one of them
Although
was a
little
profound
Hachi was
formation
younger and
at
at
the
the
level of a
seniority.
great Qian King
No
master.
one in the 13
Needless
sect
to say,
dared to argue
there were
with
even
her,
higher
except
level
for her
profound
big brother.
formations. Even as the
Flowing
third
cloud
brother,
flying
he felt the
diagram.
same way. So this is the
I
real
know.
flowing cloud
I'm
flying
just feeling
diagram.
sorry for you.
Mobile users,
With the
please
nourishment
browse
from
and
that
read.
small space,
A better reading
the peach
experience
blossom
comes
dock,
from Love
which was
Network,
almost completely destroyed,
would recover at a much faster speed.
Chapter
Along the banks of the
1927.
stream, if
Chu
nothing
Liu
went
couldn't
wrong,
hide her shock.
there should be
She
many
had heard of the
treasures
flowing
glowing
cloud
in
flying
the future.
diagram before.
This was a huge
Among
fortune.
the famous 10
As
great
long as the
sacred
peach
artifacts,
blossom dock could
the
recover
flowing
quickly,
cloud flying diagram
it would be great for
was
their
actually
master.
a very
After
inconspicuous
today,
one.
the entire
Because
peach
it had
blossom
almost no
dock will
combat
belong to
power.
our master.
It was almost
13
equivalent
muttered
to a
softly.
mobile teleportation
There was still
array,
a look of shock on
other
his
than
face,
being able to send
which still
someone
had a
away
hint
at
of
a critical
youthfulness,
moment
and
and
hadn't
save a life.
faded away.
Most of
He
the
had
time,
always known that
it
his
had no
master
was powerful.
Moreover,
but over
he
the
might
years,
not be able to
he had
accomplish
spent most
this
of
every
his time
single
with his
time.
big brother and
Didn't
the rest.
Luo Yan and
When
the
he
others
was by
fail
his
before?
master's side,
Because the
it was
peach
actually
blossom
pitiful.
cove's barrier
Plus,
collapsed.
he was
The
young
flowing
and had
cloud
never
flying
seen
diagram was
fight
disturbed with his own
by
eyes.
Chu side.
And this time,
and
it
in
had
the end,
undoubtedly
they
brought
were
him a huge
intercepted
shock.
again.
From the
Sunyi's
looks
eyes
of it,
relaxed,
the
and
flowing
a trace
cloud
of a
flying
smile appeared in his
name
usually
as
indifferent
one of the
eyes.
10 great
This
sacred
was the master's
artifacts was really
intention
a
for
little
coming here
exaggerated.
this time.
The
But
reason
he
why
didn't
Chu
expect
Luo
that
took
after
it
all
from
these
Luo
twists
Yan
and
was because
turns,
she had the
it would be
principle of not
completed
letting any
smoothly in
treasure go.
advance.
She
And
was
the
also a
entire
little
peach
curious
blossom dock was
if she
taken
had
care
any
of.
expectations
His
for
master
this
didn't
thing.
like the
She
options
really
that
didn't.
Sanson had given
Chu
him.
Luo already
Now that
had
the
the
last
heavenly
hidden
square
danger
sacred
of peach
cauldron,
blossom dock was
and this was the
eliminated,
most famous
his
of the
master
10
would
great
take
sacred
over directly.
artifacts.
There was
So
no
when she
better
looked at the
result than
others,
this.
they were actually just
The Nan
family.
family.
In the
But she
study,
never
Nan
thought
Yifan
that.
stood
So
silently.
there was actually
It was
such a
already
secret
nighttime
hidden
in the flowing
the bright
cloud
moon hung
flying
high in the
diagram.
sky.
So
The
many
cool
high-grade
moonlight flowed in through the
formations
window,
arranged densely
elongating
together.
his shadow.
What did it mean?
He had been
One
standing
had to
in this
know that to
position from day
activate
to
these
night for an entire
formations.
day.
One
The
only
night
needed
wind was
to
cold,
inject a strand
and
of
his whole
origin
body
power.
was icy cold.
A great Xian
But
King
Nan
master
Yifan didn't
working
feel it
himself
all.
to death.
He
and
lowered his head
painstakingly
slightly.
drawing a Xian
His
formation.
face was hidden in
Might
the
not
darkness
even be as light
and couldn't
as
be
this
seen
flowing
clearly.
cloud flying
Knock,
diagram.
knock.
This
This
was
was
a knock
simply
on
a
the door.
fundamental suppression.
Patriarch,
This
you
was a
haven't
true
eaten
treasure.
for a day.
Even
Why don't you have
Chulu
some
Yue,
food?
who had seen
The one who
countless
spoke
treasures,
was his confidant,
was a little stunned
an
at this
elder of the
moment.
Nan family.
This flowing
It was
cloud
difficult
flying
to conceal
diagram
the worry
greatly
in his
exceeded
voice.
her imagination.
In fact,
to
it was rare
powerhouses
for
at their
Rong
level
Xiu to see
not
such a
eating for a
reaction
day
from
was
her.
nothing.
He
The
admired
reason
it
why
for a
this
while,
elder was so
and his
worried
heart was filled
was
with
because
love.
he sensed that
He endured
something
it
was
again
wrong
and
with
again.
Nan Yifan's
And
condition.
only then did he
The
restrain
last time
himself
he
from
was
going
like this
over
was
to
on
pull
the
her
day
back.
of Nan Yi's
There's
funeral.
naturally a reason
But at that
why
time,
the flowing
he had
cloud
only
flying
stood for half a
diagram
day.
can be listed as one of the 10 great sacred artifacts.
But this time,
a
something
smile
had
appeared
clearly
on his
happened,
lips, and it was
seemed to
even more
spread between his
terrifying
brows
than
again.
Nanny's death.
Rubbing out
The
some
elder
ambiguous
standing
spring.
outside the door
Chu
was
Lu
burning
turned
with
back to
anxiety.
look at him.
Nanny was the
He knew.
apple of Nan
Rong
Yifan's
Xiu
eyes
laughed
and shook his
What
head.
could hurt him more than
This
her
is
death?
also my first
This
time
elder
seeing
knew
the
that
flowing
Luo
cloud
Yannan
flying
and
diagram.
Yuxing had gone
However,
to the Peach Blossom
I did
Cove.
know that Nan
Therefore,
Yifan
he was
valued this thing
particularly
very
frightened
much.
at this moment.
Now I finally
He wanted
understand
to
the
ask
reason.
for an explanation,
Chu Yue's
but he
hand
didn't
gently
dare.
brushed across
You
the
can
flowing
leave first.
clouds flying diagram.
After a while, Nan
the three
Yifan
Xian
finally
formations
spoke.
quickly flew
His
back.
voice was low and hoarse.
It didn't look any different
the elder
from
outside
before.
the door moved
The
his
waves
lips,
in Chu Yue's
and the
heart could
uneasiness
not
in
calm
his
down
heart
for a
grew
long
stronger.
time. She
But
was
he
a
didn't
mystic
dare to say
cultivator.
anything.
She knew
Yes,
all too well what
just
kind
as he
of
was about to
astonishing
turn
battle
around and
prowess
leave,
such
he
a
heard
treasure
Nan
possessed.
Yifan say,
Wait. Then he heard the door
It wouldn't
open.
be an
The
exaggeration
elder
to
hurriedly
say
turned
that he could
around
fight against
and saw
10,000
Nan Yifan
alone.
open the door
That's
and walk
right.
out. The Nan family is
here.
so arrogant.
I'll go to the
How
family.
could something that could catch their eye
Digression.
be an ordinary
6 o'clock
object?
mobile users.
That's
Please
right.
browse and read.
Only when so
A
many
better
Xian
reading
formations
experience
exist
comes
at the
from
same
Love
time.
Network.
Would they be able to possess such a powerful strength that could shatter space at any time? Chapter
Chu Lu
19:16.
gently
exhaled. The elder
But
was
if the
shocked
flowing
when he
cloud
heard
flying
this.
diagram
Patriarch
is so powerful.
means,
Now,
why didn't Luo Yan
Nan
and the
Yifan
others use
nodded,
it before?
but
it was
Rong
already
Xiu
late at
paused
night.
slightly.
The
The
elder
flowing
didn't
clouds
finish his
flying
sentence
diagram belongs
because
to the Nan
Nan
family.
Yifan raised his
If
head
I'm
and
not
glanced
wrong,
at him. Nan
it was
Yifan
only a
should
day,
have given it to
but
Nan
Nan
Yuxing
Yifan
in the
looked like
beginning
he had aged
to
more
let
than
him
10
use it in
years.
case of an
Under
emergency.
the faint moonlight.
However,
The
later
elder
on,
even saw
perhaps
that his
Luo
hair
Yan
had
said
turned white.
something or did something.
His face,
which
but
was
the flowing
always
cloud
high-spirited,
was
was
now
now
haggard.
ended up in his hands.
Although the light was dim,
It's a pity that he
the elder
didn't know
still
the
saw
true
Nan
use of
Yifan's
this flowing
bloodshot
clouds
eyes.
flying
The
diagram.
moment he met Nan
So he
Yifan's
wasted a
gaze,
chance to
he was
escape.
instantly speechless.
If he could use these
He
Xian
couldn't say
formations
the rest
at
of
that
the
time,
words.
even
He
if
didn't
the
know
Peach
how to
Blossom
describe
Cove's
this
barrier
feeling.
collapsed.
Desolation,
They wouldn't be
fragility,
stopped by
regret,
Chu Yue's
resentment,
power, and
It
could
was
leave
as if
all
all
the
the
negative
Chu
emotions
Lu
had
nodded
gathered
in
together.
agreement.
A
When
heavy
she got
and
this
oppressive
thing,
aura
the
spread from
restriction
Nan
on it
Yifan's
indeed
body.
didn't have
It
Luo
was so
Yan's
oppressive
aura.
that she couldn't
This
breathe.
time,
The Nan
immediately,
family has suffered
Nan
such heavy
Yifan
losses.
said,
The
Nan
elder's
Yifan
heart shouldn't
skipped a
have no
beat,
reaction,
and he
instinctively
Chu Lu
felt that
stared at the
something had
flowing
happened.
clouds flying
He had never
diagram
seen
for
the
a while,
patriarch like this,
and finally put it
Could
away.
it be that the
I
eldest
just don't
young
know what they
master and
plan
the
to
others?
do this time.
He quickly lowered
Nan
his
Yifan
head
must
and
have
replied
received
in
the
a low
news
voice.
long ago.
Yes,
And knew what had happened
with me
here.
here, please
But
rest
until
assured,
now, they
patriarch.
hadn't done anything.
Nan Yifan
This was
nodded
really abnormal.
and then walked past
Rong
him.
Xiu smiled.
A biting cold
Counter-killing
soldiers
intent
with arms,
was faintly
water
discernible.
with an earth
The
weir.
elder's heart
His
skipped a
tone
beat.
was somewhat
When he
casual,
came back to
and
his
his
senses
eyebrows were
and
relaxed,
wanted to turn around
as if he didn't
and
think
say
this
a
would
few
pose
more
any
words.
threat.
He
Chu
found that
Lu
Nan
blinked.
Yifan's
She
figure
was
had
a little
already
curious.
disappeared.
What exactly
The
did
elder,
Rong Xiu have
who was
on
left
Nan
in
Yifan?
place, frowned.
By the
His
way,
heart was
why
beating
hasn't there been
fast,
any news
as
from
if
the
it was
Black
being
Demon
gripped
Cave?
tightly by
Chu
something.
Lu suddenly
strong thought of something and uneasiness welled up in his heart. That day, when Nanny had clearly seen the totem of the black demon cave appear between Emo Yen's eyebrows. The entire black demon sword sect after a long time, he finally sighed. For some reason, I'm afraid the world of divine ruins some people to build a so-called black demon sword sect in the Peach Blossom Cove. It took him a night to come to Meha County. Absorbed all kinds of cultivation territories. Unlike the mountainous terrain of the Nan family, the treasures at the foot of the Peach Blossom boundless plain. The latter, on the green land, could understand a wide and clear river meandered through, for should be those blossoms meandered along the riverside. It was just that they didn't expect that after all the work, grand and luxurious city intercepted by her in the city gate. But there was a golden plaque with the words Meha County. Why did the black demon martial attire standing guard at the city gates? When Nan the talented ones, the sky was just beginning to brighten. There was almost no one coming in and out of the city gate. Therefore, when he appeared, he immediately attracted the attention of the various scenes she had seen before. The guards immediately became alert down her spine and held their swords in front of them. Years, the Black Demon family seemed to be hiding from the world normally, but in fact, family all kinds of secret movements had not decreased at all. It was indeed suspicious that someone would come over so early in the morning. Do you still remember the scene when you got that shield? Directly revealed his identity. 7 o'clock. From this month onwards, go inform your patriarch that Nan Yifun of the Nan clan has come to visit. Please browse and read. Nan Yifun, a better reading experience comes from the Love Network. At the E residence, the head of family E Wentao, looked up from his book in surprise when he heard this. Chapter 1928. How many people did he bring? I remember. Patriarch Nan put away the heavenly square cauldron and came alone toward Rongxiao. Moreover, he seemed to be in a hurry. Rongxiao said, as if he had something important to do. Some of the people who fought with us back, the guard who came to report from the Black Demon cave. Then, Luiyue was stunned at first. Do you want to see him or not? And a trace of surprise flashed across her eyes. Yi Wentao stood up, quickly regained her composure, and put it aside. I should have thought of it. And looked to be no more than 36 or 37 years old. All kinds of people. His facial features were handsome and elegant. Identities. He was dressed in a stone green robe. There were even more which people made him involved look like in the robbery of treasures. Anyone who saw him would find it hard to imagine everyone's background. That he was the current head of family didn't know that she had obtained a top-tier divine artifact. There were very few rumors about Yi Wentao. So she didn't pay much attention to it in everyone's imagination. Now that she thought about it, the people from the Black Demon cave only in that way had been after the Black Shield family beginning. But in reality, the zither score in her body from what most people imagined him to be. Patriarch reached out to her, please come to the living room, pulled her into his arms, I'll come later, and kissed her forehead. Yes. Don't worry, guard received no matter the order who comes, and quickly left. Chu Luiyue looked up and glanced at him. As he left in a hurry. You mean the people from the Black Demon cave slightly, and the Nan family clan will all come here? He didn't have much contact with each other. He knew a little about Nan Yifun, and she could always guess what he meant. This person was proud by nature. It shouldn't be just now that he suddenly came in person. Held her waist. Something must have happened. Intertwining his fingers with hers. Heart was pounding. And a dark look flashed across his eyes. He didn't know what had happened that could make Nan Yifun put aside his treasure trove and come in person. And many people have coveted it for so many years and didn't have an answer. But because of the unstable barrier, he decided to meet Nan Yifun. They haven't been able to make a move. You can cultivate now that you've taken over the Peach Blossom Cove. No one will disturb you. Many people will undoubtedly be jealous. Behind the 8 had already thought of Rosewood base. These days, a figure was vaguely reflected. E and the others to hurry up. His voice was low and slightly hoarse, Peach Blossom Cove, but it also contained a bit of laziness. However, that might not be enough. Only then did he walk out. The people from the Yintian Tower will be here soon. After telling the servants to guard the place well, and no one can take it from you. Rongxiao's voice was gentle, Nan Yifun was led into the living room. Pressure that could not be disobeyed. Haha, brother Nan, there seemed to be waves surging in the depths of his eyes. Yi Wentao walked in with an eager smile. Don't worry, I can protect my own things. The two looked at each other for a moment. The news of Chu silent confrontation, the Peach Blossom Cove, a trace of surprise flashed across the divine ruins world. In his impression, all the aristocratic families and clans were in an uproar and proud. Their hearts filled with shock. He was visibly haggard, and his hair was stained with white frost. Countless people in the divine ruins world were secretly eyeing. Just as Yi Wentao was guessing in his earth energy, Nan Yifun had already geographical location. I'm here because I have something important that had never been exploited. It was simply a new and ideal world. Even though countless people had returned in defeat over the years, reacted. There were still quite a few people and dismissed who held on to that tiny bit of hope. All of you leave first, hoping to find an opportunity to take over the Peach Blossom Cove was a little hesitant. Nan Yifun didn't look too good like this. If he went crazy of those who had this idea were first-rate families and clans. Voice turned cold. Those who were weaker in terms of level and strength knew dared to come alone. That they had no chance of success. Did he not even have the guts to talk to him alone? An extravagant Wouldn't that be a joke? Countless people had below all knew his temper. Who would so they didn't dare to say more and hurriedly left. Those first-rate families and clans in the divine ruins world, no one dared to eavesdrop for themselves. He walked over and sat opposite before anyone could react. His expression had returned to its usual gentle and calm. And that person was something to say. What was her identity? Nan Yifun, the princess consort of the Yuntian Tower, time to form an alliance with you. The direct disciple of Lingxiao College's dean. Please browse for a better reading experience. The descendant of the weapon refining venerable Shengguan Jing. Recently, this name had become famous throughout the entire divine ruins world. Nan Yifun not only because of these identities, every word, but also because of the close relationship between her and resentment. And the two ancient divine slightly stunned, then smiled. Who didn't know that her contracted divine beast, after all, was the young master the relationship between Family Phoenix and the Nan family had never been close. Who didn't know that the clan leader of the great Phoenix Dragon clan, Nan Yifun, suddenly came alone to the and asked for an alliance to give her and How could Yi Wentao not be surprised? Gift. But Nan Yifun's expression didn't change. still unbelievable.
As long as
she had taken over the Peach Blossom Cove.
You can name
Not to
any
mention,
conditions.
it was rumored that she had relied on her own
strength.
He looked at Nan Yifan, the barrier
and
of the
carefully
Peach Blossom
observed his
Cove.
expression.
It was simply a
pondering
fantasy.
Inwardly.
So
This
many
sentence
first-rate
from
families
Nan
and
Yifan's
clans
mouth
had
was
mobilized
extremely
their
rare.
entire clan
At the same
to take
time,
over the Peach
it
Blossom
also showed
Cove.
Nan Yifan's
But they had all
determination
failed.
this time.
How could
Did
such
he
a
really
young girl
come to
do
win
it?
over family?
No one was willing to
but the
believe
Nan
it.
family and family
However,
status
the
were
news
equal.
that came
Why
later
would he do
made them
this?
believe that the
After
Peach
thinking
Blossom
about
Cove
it,
was
he
now
went out
completely
decided
under
to ask
Chu
first.
Yu's control.
Brother Nan, don't worry.
I heard that her subordinates
if you really
are now in
encounter
charge of
difficulties,
the entire Peach
family
Blossom
will
Cove.
not stand by
Now
and
the
do
two
nothing.
entrances of the
I
Peach
just don't
Blossom
know.
Cove.
What is it that
One
needs
is
to make
connected
Brother
to the
Nan
gate
so
realm,
worried?
and the other
Yifan
is facing
paused.
the interior.
The Nan family
Both
wants to fight
entrances
with
have been
Yin Tian
heavily
Tower.
guarded by her
Yuan
subordinates.
Tao's expression
Anyone
finally
who enters
changed.
or exits
Yin
will have
Tian
to
Tower?
undergo strict
You want to go
scrutiny.
against the Holy Sun?
Family E.
Nan Yifan
In front
nodded.
of the ancestral hall.
Yes, a
Yuan
solemn
Tao
family
frowned.
meeting was being
Brother
held.
Nan,
I'm
all
afraid
the
I
important
can't
people
agree
of
to
Family
this.
E had gathered
Was this
here.
Nan Yifan crazy?
Originally, their
Why would
most
he want to
important
fight with
task
Rong
today
Xiao?
was to choose
Nan
the
Yifan
Family E's
wasn't
young
surprised
master.
by Yuan Tao's
However,
answer.
the sudden
In fact,
news from
a day
the Peach
ago,
Blossom
he
Cove
wouldn't
had
have
caused
thought
an
that he would
uproar.
make such a
They
decision.
couldn't help but shift
But
part of
things
their
were
attention to the
unpredictable.
Peach Blossom
At this
Cove.
point, he had no
Although
way out.
Family E
The
rarely got
moment
involved
Yixing's
in
jade
these matters
broke,
in the world
he
of
knew
God.
that he couldn't endure
It didn't mean
anymore.
that they didn't pay
He could not
attention to
completely
it.
blame Yi's
Moreover,
death on them.
Family
But
E had been
Yixing,
harboring some
his
thoughts
years of
about
hard
the Peach
work had all
Blossom
gone
Cove
to
all
waste.
these years.
As I said,
Now, before they could
I will
make a
agree
move,
to any condition
someone
of
else
Brother
had
E.
beaten them to it.
Nan Yi's
Who could
tone was
accept
much
it?
heavier than before.
An old man said as he
Yuan Tao's
stroked his
frown
beard
deepened.
inside.
Nan
It's
Yifan
only
knew
been
how
a few
dangerous
days.
it was to go
That's
against
really
Rong
fast.
Xiao. Why did he have to do this? He was even willing to pay a huge price for it. How could
Yuan
she
Tao
take
shook
over
his
the
head.
Peach Blossom
Brother
Cove by
Nan,
herself?
You know very
I think
well
the
that
power
this
behind
matter
this
is not
matter
that simple.
is most likely
In
from
the
the
end,
Yintian Tower.
he didn't want to offend
Another
Rong
old
Xiao
man
for the
sneered
sake of the
coldly.
Nan family.
The Yintian
Brother
Tower
Nan,
was actually
you should
referring
know
to
how
Rong
difficult
Xiao.
it is to
Many
deal with
people
that
nodded
person.
in agreement.
If he chose to
Chu
go
Lui
against
and Rong
Yintian
Xiao
Tower,
were husband and wife.
it would not end well
How
for
could
him.
Rong Xiao not
Why
be
must Brother
involved in
Nan
this
do
matter?
this?
If
I
there's a
heard that the
misunderstanding
subordinates
between
that
you
Shang
and
Guan
Yu
Yu brought
brought
with
with
her
her,
were
I can step
previously her
forward and
subordinates
mediate
outside the world
perhaps.
of God.
Since
I
Nan
don't think
Yifan
they are
had
very
personally
capable
come looking
and
for
can't
him,
handle the
Rong
matters
Xiao
in the
would
Peach
definitely
Blossom
know
Cove
about
well.
this matter.
The people
Then,
behind this,
no matter what he
must
said,
be from the Yintian
it was
Tower,
impossible for
right?
him to walk out
Someone
of this
guessed.
quagmire clean.
In fact, more than
Instead
one
of being
person thought
secretive
so,
and arousing
almost
suspicion
everyone
for
had
no
the same
reason.
thought.
It was
The old
better
man
to be
who
honest
spoke
with
first
him.
frowned and
In
said
this way,
hesitantly,
he could also do
but
the Nan
I
family a
received
favor.
news that
In
Shang
Yuan
Guan Yu has
Tao's
a
opinion,
subordinate
this
who
was the
seems
best
to have
choice.
been in the Peach Blossom
However,
Cove for
Nan
a few
Yifan
years
interrupted him
and is doing very well.
I think he's called.
There's
San.
no possibility
He's
of
quite famous.
reconciliation
Didn't
between
this
Yintian
prove that
Tower
she
and
her
me?
subordinates
Yuan
were
Tao
actually
looked at
quite
him
capable?
suspiciously. However,
Brother
most
Nan,
people
you
didn't
mean.
think much of this.
Nan Yifan took a
Who
deep
knows
breath
what's going
and
on?
looked straight at
Anyway,
Yuan Tao.
I think
He
that
and
Shang
Shang
Guan
were
Yu
both
took
killed
over the
by them.
Peach Blossom
Yuan
Cove
Tao was
with the
shocked
help
at
of a lot
first,
of people.
but then he
That's
immediately
how she
understood.
became it.
No
She
wonder.
didn't even think about
Those
how
two
powerful
children
her
were
backer
Nan
was.
Yifan's lifeblood.
What a pity,
Especially
it's such
Nan
a good
Yixing,
place.
who was basically
Jun Jiuqing
confirmed
sat
to
in
be the
his
next
seat
patriarch
and lowered
of the
his
Nan
eyes
family.
slightly,
Because
no
both of them
expression
were
could
very
be seen on his
outstanding.
face.
Nan
Just
Yifan
as
had
everyone
always
was
been proud
lamenting,
of himself as
Yuan
the
Tao
patriarch.
walked out of the
Now
ancestral
that both
hall.
of them were dead,
Everyone quickly
not only
quieted
did Nan
down.
Yifan have no
Young
descendants,
Master Family E,
but his position
I already
as the
have a
patriarch
suitable
would also
candidate
be
in mind.
unstable in the future.
Yuan Tao's gaze
Even
swept
Yuan
across
Tao
the
knew
crowd
that there
and
were
finally
many people
landed
in the
on
Nan
Jun
family
Jiuqing,
who
Mobile
secretly
users,
coveted the
please
position
browse
of the
for a better
patriarch.
reading experience
Nan
from
Yifan
LoveNet.
did this to avenge his children and to protect his position as the patriarch. These two things were the most important to him. Chapter
No
1929.
wonder he came
Today.
The crowd
In
followed
fact,
his gaze.
What Yuan Tao
The
didn't
9
know was that
ministers
there was
are
a very
extremely
important
talented
reason
and
why Nan
capable.
Yifan chose
They are
to do
undoubtedly
this.
the best
Even if he
candidates
didn't
for
do
the
this,
position of young
Rong
master.
Xiao wouldn't let him go.
Yuan Tao's
With Rong
expression was
Xiao's
as gentle
intelligence,
as ever,
since he
but
had
his
already
tone was
killed
deep
Nan
and
Yixing.
powerful.
He would
Every
definitely
single
find
word
out
was
that
clearly Nan Yifan was
transmitted to
behind
the ears
this.
of every
How could
single
he just let
person
it go?
present. After the
crowd
matter
was
at
silent
Peach Blossom
as they
Dock
looked at
was
each
over,
other with
he
different
would definitely
expressions.
make a move.
In fact,
At that
they
time,
had already expected
Nan
this
Yifan
outcome.
and the others would
The
be in a
competition
passive
for the position of young
Instead
master
of
of the
sitting and
family,
waiting
he
for
was
death.
very intense.
It was better to make a
However,
move first.
Jun Joching easily
There might even
stood
be
at
a
the top
chance
after
after his
arrival.
appearance.
Nan
Even
Yifan
those
really
who
had no
disliked
other
him had
choice.
to admit
How could
that
he not
no
be
one
in
in
on
the
the
younger
younger
generation of the
If it
family,
wasn't for the fact
he
that
could
he
compare
really
to
had no
Jun
other way
Joching
out
in
he
terms
wouldn't
of
have done
talent
this.
and ability.
After knowing
After
that
a
Nan
while,
Yifan had
an
died,
elder said
he stood in
hesitantly,
the
"You're
study
right.
for an entire
The 9
day.
ministers are
He
indeed
seemed to have
very
done
outstanding,
nothing, but in
his
fact,
surname
he had
is
thought a
Jun
lot.
after all.
He regretted
The
it.
ancestor of
Even
the
he
Baiming
didn't know why
dynasty
he
had
tacitly
married a daughter
allowed
of the
Nan
family
Yifan 1,000
and the
years
others
ago.
to go to Peach
They had
Blossom
given
Dock
birth to a
quietly at
child,
that time.
but the
It
power
was
of
as
the
if he had
bloodline
made
in
that
the child's
decision by
body was too
accident.
thin. Perhaps
the family felt
it was
embarrassed
because he felt
and
guilty
ordered the
towards
child to be
Nan
sent
Yi,
back to the
and
Biming
also
dynasty.
resentful towards Rong
For so
Xiu
many
and
years,
Chu Luyue.
no one in the
He thought that
imperial
they didn't
family
bring
of the
many
Biming
people with them,
dynasty
and
had
it was
inherited
really
the
the
power
best
of the
time to
bloodline.
make a move in a
That
place
was
like
until
Peach
June
Blossom
Joching
appeared.
appeared. What if
Not
he
only
succeeded,
did he have the
it
power
was
of the
this what
family
if,
Yi's bloodline,
and all those
but it
thoughts
was
that
also
made
very
Nan
pure.
Yifan make this
Moreover,
decision
he had
that he would regret
as
for
his
the rest
master.
of his life.
This made him
At this
even more
point,
confident
there
in
was
the
no
family
use in
Yi.
regretting it.
However, this was
he could
one
only
thing.
fight back.
Becoming the
Yi
young
Wentao
master
didn't
was
know
another.
this.
But
In
in his
fact,
opinion,
this was the
the
biggest
reasons
reason
that
why
Nan
most
Yifan
people
said were
objected
enough
to
to
him
support him
becoming
to
the
make
young
such a
master.
choice.
However,
He was silent for
Yi
a long
Wentao
time.
did not seem to care.
But he was still
When he
unwilling
heard
to
this,
agree.
he only chuckled
Brother
softly.
Nan, others may not
However,
know, but you know,
the power of the
that
family
person
Yi's
is really
bloodline
not
also
easy to
flows
deal
in
with.
the 9 ministers'
Perhaps
bodies,
this was
isn't
Nan
it?
Yifan's only choice.
Moreover,
but
the
what did
power of
this
his
have to do
bloodline
with
was
his
very
family
pure
Yi?
and of a very high level.
It was just discerning.
If he got involved
was
in
the
this
big
matter
deal?
for no reason,
The power of his
not only
bloodline
would he not get
determined
any benefits,
that he was a member of
but
the
he would
family
also get
Yi.
himself into
After
trouble.
hearing Yi Wentao's
Yi Wentao
words,
never made
the
a
crowd
losing
did
deal.
not say anything
Seeing
else.
that he was in such
His
a difficult
intentions were very
position,
clear.
Nan
He had
Yifan
already
sneered
made
in
up
his
his
mind
heart,
to choose
but he
Jun
didn't show
Joching
it
as
on
the
his
young
face.
master.
He suddenly
family
said,
Yi,
"Brother
no one
Yi,
could go against
do you
Yi
know that
Wentao's
Rong
wishes.
Xiu and Shang
All they
Guanyu
could
went to
do
the
was
god-slaying
obey.
tomb
Yi
and
Wenzhua,
took something
who
from
was
the black
sitting
wall?"
beside Jun
Yi Wentao
Joching,
suddenly looked
finally
up.
breathed a sigh of relief.
He restrained his
Fortunately,
expression.
Big
But
Brother
Nan
still
Yifan
made
was
such
also
a choice in the
sharp-eyed.
end.
How
His
could he
heart
not
was
see the
faintly
surging
excited,
waves in his eyes?
and he had to tightly
As for
grasp
what
the
it is,
armrest of the chair
I think
to
Brother
barely
Yi should
suppress
know
his
without me
excitement.
saying it, right?
He was Jun
Nan
Joching's
Yifan
master.
suddenly laughed.
In the future,
The Holy
when
Sun's
Jun
princess
Joching
is not a
became the
simple
young master
person.
of the family
The heavenly
Yi,
square
his
cauldron
status
and the
would
two
definitely
Tian
rise
babies
as well.
are both in
Although
her
he was
hands.
Yi Wentao's
In
younger
addition,
brother,
she has
he
an
rarely
unknown
interfered
black shield
with the
in her
clan's
hand.
affairs.
Although it
Most
looks
of the time,
ordinary,
he didn't
it is
have
not
much
inferior
say.
to any
Now that he
venerable
had a
artifact.
relationship with
When
Jun
Nan
Joching,
Yifan said this,
naturally,
he didn't
it was
notice that
different.
Yi Wentao quickly
Joching
frowned
come
when he
here.
heard about the black shield.
It's strange.
Yi Wentao waved
I
at
heard
Jun
that Shang
Joching.
Guanyu is a
Jun
person
Joching
outside the
stood up
Divine Ruins
and
world,
strode over with
but
his
she
long
seems to have a
legs.
strong
A
bloodline
jade thumb
power.
ring appeared in
Brother
Yi
Nan,
Wentao's hand.
have you seen her
The jade
totem?
thumb ring was light
Digression,
green and clear.
7 o'clock p.m.
Family
fifth
Yi's
update.
totem was engraved
Wow,
on it.
mobile phone users,
Seeing this
please
item,
browse and
many
read.
people were envious.
A better reading experience
This was the
comes
status
from Love
symbol
Network.
of the family Yi's young master.
For so many years, Family Yi hadn't chosen a young master. They
Chapter
didn't expect
1918.
that when they finally
Nan
chose
Yifan
one,
shook his head.
it would be an outsider.
There were a lot
Naturally,
of rumors about
everyone's
Chu
feelings
Liyue
were
in the
very
Divine Ruins
complicated.
world.
The surroundings
Especially
were
after
silent.
her wedding with
Yi
Rong
Wentao
Xiu.
handed the
The
jade thumb
rumors
ring
became
to Jun
even more
Joching.
heated.
Jun
At
Joching's
first,
expression
everyone
was
only
slightly
thought that she
restrained.
came from a
He
humble
took the
background,
ring and put it on
but a
his
series
finger.
of things that
At
happened
this moment,
later
the
made
totem
everyone
on the
know
jade
that
thumb
she
ring
actually
suddenly
had
flashed
several
brightly
backers behind her.
A powerful aura
Although Nan
suddenly
Yifan
descended
had
upon
seen
the
Chu
area
Liyue before.
Almost at the
He had
same
never
time,
seen her totem.
the same totem
Brother
appeared
Yi,
between Jun
why are you
Joching's
suddenly
eyebrows.
asking about this?
A majestic power
Nan
surged
Yifan
out
was a
from
little
the jade
puzzled.
thumb ring
Yi Wentao
and poured
smiled
into his
and
body.
lowered his eyes.
The aura around his
Nothing.
body
I
also
just
grew
suddenly
stronger.
thought of this and
After
felt
about
a
a
little
quarter of an
curious.
hour,
I heard that when she
fluctuations
tested her
gradually
bloodline at the
subsided.
Yuntian
Yi
Tower,
Wentao's face
the
showed
result
some
was the
satisfaction.
same as the chosen.
Joching,
If she
you
was
really
really
didn't
born
disappoint
outside
the
me.
Divine
The
Ruins
jade
world.
thumb ring's
How could
reaction
she have
meant
the
that it
bloodline
recognized
power?
Jun Joching
One
as the
had to
young
know
master.
that only the
In the
ancestors
future,
who had broken
he would
through
be
the
family
shackles
Yi's young master
and reached the peak
Jun
strength
Joching laughed.
would have the bloodline
The corners
power
of his
later
eyes
on.
and the
It was
tips of his
impossible for
eyebrows
someone
carried a hint
outside
of
the Divine
devilishnesses.
Ruins world to
Thank
do
you
so.
for your favor,
Isn't
family
Shang
head.
Guanjing her
You're
ancestor?
outstanding enough.
As Nan
Yi
Yifan
Wentao
spoke,
patted
he
his
suddenly
shoulder.
stopped.
His eyes
It was
were
indeed
full of
not
undisguised
right.
admiration.
Although Shang Guanjing
Seeing this,
was a
what else
supreme
did
god
everyone not
expert
understand?
and used to be in
Yi
the
Wentao
limelight
was clearly on
when he
Jun
came to the
Joching's
Divine
side.
Ruins world.
From now on,
he seemed to
Jun
have
Joching's
already
status in
established the
family Yi,
Tianling
and
dynasty.
even in the entire
Later
world
on,
of God would be
he
different.
encountered trouble in the
Actually,
Divine Ruins
besides
world.
choosing a
His
young
soul
master
scattered,
today,
and he
there's
fell
another
into a
matter
deep
that I
sleep
want
for
to
1,000
discuss with
years.
everyone.
It was
Yi
not
Wentao
until
looked
Chu
at everyone
came
again
here
his
that he
smile smile faded a little, and no matter how he thought about it, the bloodline power realized that he was about to say something important. Did not seem to be inherited from him. They all perked up and looked over. Nan Yifan frowned. The atmosphere became a little cold. After several years of depletion, interested in the energy of heaven and earth in Yuantao smiled, is no longer the same as before. For the brother Nan doesn't know, then there's nothing to find another place with abundant energy. He was always so stubborn that soon as possible, gradually lost his patience. Went straight to the point. Brother E, everyone present was stunned for a moment. I will only ask you one last time. They were well aware of this point. Do you agree to my previous proposal? Yuantao fell into deep thought. Such words were not pleasant to hear. If
Time
word got
slowly
out,
passed.
it would easily
Every
cause
minute
panic
and every
in the entire
second was
family.
torture for Nan
No one
Yifan,
expected
but he could only
to
wait
take the initiative
after a while
and say it
Yi
so
Wentao
bluntly.
finally nodded.
Yi Wentao looked
I
around
promise
with
you.
a magnanimous
However,
expression.
I have a condition.
Everyone, there's no need
Nan
to
Yifan
panic.
and Yi Wentao
All the
talked
aristocratic
for a long time
families in the world of God
About an
will
hour
face
later,
this problem.
the door was opened
It's not
again.
just our family.
Nan
Yi.
Yifan cupped
This
his
was the
hands
truth
and took his
The
leave.
world of God
Brother,
was vast
please
and had
wait.
abundant
I'll be
energy
going
of
back
heaven
now.
and earth. Yi Wentao knew that it would be hard for him to stay
But at
here.
the same time,
so he didn't
it
ask
also
him to
contained
stay
countless
and just
dangers.
nodded.
Brother
If any
Nan, be
faction
careful.
wanted to truly
Nan
develop,
Yifan
they
responded
needed
and
to
turned
have a
to
stable
leave.
place to
His
cultivate.
figure quickly disappeared
time
into
passed,
the distance.
The energy
Yi
of
Wentao
heaven
didn't
and
look
earth
away
in the corresponding
until his
area
figure
would be
disappeared.
depleted.
The
Over
sound of
time,
footsteps
it
could
would
be
naturally
heard.
become
Yi
less and
Wentao's
less.
expression
When the
returned to
density
normal
of origin
as he calmly
power
looked
fell
up.
below a certain
The
level,
person who came
it
was
was
his
no
second
longer
brother,
suitable to
Yi Wenzhua.
stay. After all, this would affect the cultivation of
Big
everyone
brother,
in the
that person
aristocratic
just now was
families.
Nan Yifan?
This was
In
extremely
front of Yi
important to
Wentao,
any faction.
Yi Wenzhua's
In
attitude
fact,
was much more
over
restrained.
the years,
On
many
the surface,
aristocratic
Yi
families in the
Wenzhua looked
world of
older
God
than Yi
had
Wentao.
already begun to
But
look
in
for a
fact,
better
Yi
place
Wentao
to
was
settle
10
down.
years older than
Some
him.
succeeded, some
It was
failed.
just that Yi Wentao
The
was
reason why the
extremely
family
talented,
had such a
and
big
his
reaction
cultivation
was
because
because
the
the status
smooth.
of the family
So he looked
he was
younger.
higher than
He
that of the
nodded.
first-rate
What is he
aristocratic
doing here?
families.
Yi Wentao
Whether it was
frowned.
the superior
The Nan family
cultivation
had little
environment of
contact
Meha
with them,
County,
as
or
the
other
family
aspects,
Nan
they
Yifan
could easily
suddenly
crush
came in
others
person.
in almost all
It was hard not
aspects.
to think too
They were
much.
used to being
Yi
high and
Wentao
mighty.
smiled faintly.
Now,
He
Yi
has
Wentao
his reasons
suddenly
for
announced
coming.
that they were
Yi
looking for
Wentao
another
felt a little
place.
uncomfortable.
Of course,
Big
it
brother
was difficult
clearly
for them
didn't
to
want to
talk
accept.
about it.
But everyone,
was
don't
nothing.
worry.
Although
After
the
all,
current Meha
the two of
County
them
is
were not
slightly
ordinary
inferior
people.
to the original.
What they discussed
It's
together
still better
must be
than many of
important,
the first-rate
which couldn't be
aristocratic
easily
families.
revealed.
The reason why
he
we're
was
doing
Big
this
Brother's
now is
younger
just to
brother.
be prepared.
Was he not
Yi
qualified to
Wentao's
know?
next sentence
The reason
finally
why
made
everyone's
everyone's
so
expressions
concerned
look
about this
better.
matter
He paused
that
for a
this was
moment,
not
then
the first
continued.
time.
Moreover,
Such a situation
it's
had
rare that a
happened.
place more
The head of
suitable
the
for
family,
cultivation
Yi
than
Wentao.
Meha County has
Almost
appeared.
all the important
Naturally,
matters
we
were
can't miss
decided
it.
by him.
Mobile
Here,
users,
he had absolute
please
power.
browse for a better
Yi
reading
Wentao had never
experience from
coveted the
Love
position
Network.
of the head of the family. But over the years, Big Brother often didn't tell him anything. In fact,
Chapter
there were many
1930,
times when many elders
people
knew
looked at
about
each
it,
other,
but he knew
Someone
nothing
asked
about
tentatively.
it. Yi Wentao
Family
always
head, are
felt
you
that he
talking
was
about Peach
marginalized
Blossom
in the
Dock?
family.
Yi Wentao
After a
nodded.
long time,
That's right.
How could there
Peach
be no
Blossom Dock
resentment
is
and
rich in heaven and
dissatisfaction?
earth energy.
But other than that,
Although people have been
Big
coming
Brother
in and
treated
out of
him
it
well
over
in
the
other
years.
aspects.
Due to the
This made Yi
turbulence in
Wentao
the
feel
void
very
and
conflicted.
the instability
And
of
this
the barrier,
time, it was still
the
the same.
resources it
He
contains
endured
have
it for a
not been used
while,
up.
and
Moreover,
finally swallowed
its
his
location
anger
is very
and changed
special.
the topic.
And it is indeed
I'm
a
here
very
because I
suitable
have good
choice.
news to tell
Yi
Big Brother.
Wentao's words were very
Jiu-Qing has broken
straightforward.
through.
He did
Yi
not
Wentao
hide
raised
his
his
determination
eyebrows,
to
seeming
take
a
over
little
Peach Blossom
surprised.
Dock.
Someone
fast.
said hesitantly.
Just now he had told
But
him to cultivate
Peach Blossom
well.
Dock is
In
now
just a few
Shangguanyu's
hours,
territory.
he had broken through.
If we go there recklessly,
expected
I'm
of you
afraid
personally taught him.
Yi Wentao smiled.
Yi Wentao praised
She is the
with
wife of Rong
satisfaction.
Xiu,
The
These
son
words
of Yintian
finally
Tower.
improved Yi Wentao's
What is she
mood.
doing in Peach
Not at
Blossom
all.
Dock?
After he
Many
came
people
back,
nodded.
he has been
What he said
cultivating
made
with
sense.
Big Brother.
Moreover,
With
the
the
two
two
of
of
them
them
had
had
just
just
gotten
gotten
married.
married. This child naturally
Naturally
broke
broke
through
actions
quickly.
inevitably made
As he
people
spoke,
think
he
more.
paused for a moment.
However, Big
They
Brother
could not rule
no
out
matter
the
what,
possibility
half
that
of
this was
family
Rong
Yi's blood
Xiu's
flows in
intention.
Jiu-Qing's
Was
body.
he not interested
You
in
see,
Peach Blossom
the
Dock
position
at
of
all?
the young master.
Everyone had heard that
From the
Peach
beginning,
Blossom Dock
this
belonged
was
to
what he had been
Luiyue.
thinking.
But
Yi
perhaps the
Wentao
real
had no
master was
children.
Rong Xiu.
In the future,
Moreover,
he would
in the world of
definitely
divine
choose a
ruins,
successor
the
from the
strong
younger
are
generation.
respected. And
Yi
Jun
Wentao was
Jiuqing was
still
the most
smiling,
suitable one,
but there was a
Yi
hint of
Wentao put
arrogance
one
in
hand
his
behind
eyes.
his back.
Even if
He
Peach
didn't beat
Blossom
around the
Dock
bush
belonged
like
to
before.
Shangguanyu.
Instead,
She
he
would be able
seriously
to
thought for a
defend
long
it.
time.
Jiu-Qing,
You are
what do you
right.
think?
It is
He
indeed
turned
time
his
to
head
choose
and
a
looked
young
at
master.
Jun Jiuqing.
Inform
Jun
everyone
Jiuqing's
that
eyes
the
flashed.
family meeting will be held
Family
tomorrow.
head, you are right.
Tomorrow?
Yi Wentao
Yi
nodded.
Wentao was a little
In that
surprised.
case,
But
everyone
the joy in
should
his
go
heart
back and
washed away
prepare.
these emotions.
We will set off tomorrow.
Family head, he had
He
made up his
immediately mind to
nodded,
attack Peach
unable
Blossom
to hide
Doc.
the excitement
However,
in his eyes.
they were not the
Okay,
only ones who
I'll
made
go
the
now.
same choice.
The Nan
Peach Blossom
family.
Doc,
It was already night time,
Chuluyue put
but
down
the
the
lights
teacup
on the
in
top
his
of the
hand
mountain were
and
still
looked at
bright.
Rongxiu in
a
surprise.
solemn and spacious
Two big
room,
families,
all the elders
mobile
of the Nan
users,
family
please
were
browse
gathered
and
here.
read.
As
the
the better
reading
reading
experience
Nan
came
Yifan
from Love
sat
Network.
at the head of the table. The air seemed to have frozen, and everyone was silent.
After a long while,
Chapter
Nan Yifan
1919
finally said. Rongxiu nodded
how
and
it
said
is.
slowly,
Yu Sheng
"That's
and
right.
the others had
Most of
originally
the
gone to
families in
Peach
the world
Blossom
of
Dock
divine
to look
ruins
for
are
Yi's
divided
murderer,
into first,
but they ended
second,
up finding
and third-class
Rongxiu
families
and Shengguan
But
Yu.
there are two families
However,
that are
not
not
long
included
after
in
they
this.
sent the news back,
One is the Nan family.
His voice was heavy
and the
and
other
hoarse.
is family E.
His face was haggard.
Chu Luiyue was a
a
little
face
puzzled.
that no one had ever
Why
seen
are these
before.
two families so
It could
unique?
be seen how much of a blow
Rongxiu
this
laughed.
matter had dealt
It's
to
a
him.
long time ago.
The crowd grew
Do you
even
remember
quieter.
that I mentioned to
If
you
all
that
of this
10,000
was true,
years ago,
didn't that mean
there
that
was
the
an
ones who
earth-shattering
killed
battle
Nan
in
Yi,
the
Nan
God-slaying
Yusheng,
mound,
and
and
the others were all
countless experts
Rongxiu's
died?
group?
Chu Luiyue
Apart
nodded.
from Yu Sheng,
Of course she
more
remembered.
than half of the
At
8
that
elders
time, the
who
battle
went with
was
him were
fierce.
killed.
I
If
heard
his
that
guess
many
was
people
correct,
almost fought their
there
way
should
out
only
of the
be Luo
God-slaying
Yan
mound, and the other
and
three
there were
left.
countless
Up
casualties.
until now,
Such
there
a
had
fierce
been no
battle
news from
caused
them.
the energy
I
of
think
heaven
the
and earth to
situation
riot,
isn't good.
and it was almost dark. It gradually threatened
The
many
more Nan
ordinary
Yifan
cultivators
spoke,
outside
the
the
uglier
God-slaying
everyone's
mound.
expression
Chu
became.
Luiyue pondered
Most
for a
people
moment.
didn't know that
Judging
Nan
from the
Yusheng
tombstones
and the
they
others
had
had
seen
gone
on
to
the
God
Peach Blossom
slaying mound.
Dock.
The
When
battle
they
at
received
that
the
time
news,
could have
they
caused
heard that
such a
5
result.
elders had already
With
been
so many
killed.
experts
Nan
gathered and
Yusheng,
fought,
who was
it
most
was
likely
easy
to
to
become the
imagine
next
what a terrifying
patriarch,
scene
was
it would
also
have been.
dead. Fortunately, someone came to stop them
They've gone too
and
far.
set up a boundary
An elder
outside
finally
the
couldn't help
God-slaying
but
mound.
shout angrily.
It was not until the
Patriarch,
battle ended that
we
the
must make them
boundary
pay for
finally
this.
broke.
Isn't
But
it
it also
just a
protected the
tower?
people outside
Do you
the
think our Nan
God-slaying
family
mound.
is afraid of
Chu
them?
Luiyue widened
That's
her
right.
eyes in surprise.
Since they're so presumptuous,
What kind of person
don't
could do
blame
that?
us for being rude.
This not only required
Flatten Peach
benevolence
Blossom
and
Dock,
righteousness,
digression,
but also
the
extraordinary
list of
strength.
Xuqing and
Rongxiu
Xiaoxiang's
paused
neighbors
for a
will be
moment and
posted in the
smiled.
comment section
That
tonight.
person's identity
Pay
is
attention
very
to it.
mysterious, and
Continue
no one
at
knows.
6 o'clock.
Later,
Mobile users,
when the battle
please
ended,
browse
that
for a
person
better reading
disappeared.
experience
It
from
is
Love
said that the
Network.
ancestors of the Nan family and family E were followers of that person. Chu Luiyue suddenly understood. Chapter 1931. Later, the two of them did not
All kinds
pursue
of
that
voices
person.
sounded.
Instead,
It seemed that everyone
they each
was
found a
angry
place
and
in the
resentful
world of
about
divine
this matter,
ruins and couldn't
establish
wait to
their
go to
own
Peach
families
Blossom
and
Dock to
clans.
take revenge.
Today, the Nan
However,
family and
was that
family
really the case?
Rongxiu
Nan
poured a
Yifan
cup of
lowered
tea.
his eyes to
His
hide
slender
the sneer in
fingers
his
gently
eyes.
stroked the
He knew all
porcelain
too well
teacup.
what these people
His
were
voice
like.
was light and
On the
ethereal.
surface, they
10,000
seemed to be
years
united
have
against a
passed,
common enemy,
and these things have
but
long
in
been
reality,
buried in the long
some of them
passage
might
of
be
time.
overjoyed.
There are very few
Nanny's
people who
death
know
didn't
about
affect
it.
them much.
The Nan family
However,
and family
Nan
had
Yusheng
always
was
thought
also
highly
dead
of themselves.
This time,
and rarely got
there was
involved
no
in
longer
outside
a
affairs.
suitable candidate.
The
in
only
Nan
ones who
Yifan's
know
line
about them
to become
are
the
those
successor of the
first-rate
aristocratic
family.
families.
The Nan
with
family
quite a bit
seemed
of
to be
inheritance.
harmonious.
But
No
the
wonder,
competition between
after
the lines
listening
was
to
fierce.
Rongxiu's
A
explanation,
few years ago,
Chu Luiyue
the situation was only
understood
stabilized
why she had
because
never
of
heard
Nan
of the Nan
Yusheng's
family
outstanding
before.
talent and
It
Nan
wasn't
Yifan's
hard to
strength.
understand why
But it
Nan
was
Yi
different now,
and the others
Nan
were so
Yusheng was
arrogant.
dead when they
And
met
Nan
them
Yifan
outside
was
the
visibly
God-slaying
haggard.
tomb.
The
The
immense
Nan
grief
family
almost
and
caused him
family
to break
It was
down.
an existence
He couldn't
that
divert
transcended
so much
these
attention to
aristocratic
care about
families.
other things.
But he didn't want to care anymore. Too many
So the
things
Nan
had
family
happened
and
during
family
this period
are
of
the two
time,
most powerful
and the
families in the
successive blows
God-slaying
almost
mound.
broke him.
Why was Nan
Everyone
Yifan
only
so
thought
afraid
that
of
he
you
was
before?
grieving because of the loss of his
Luiyue asked
two beloved
tentatively.
children.
It wasn't
But
the
who
first
knew the
time
real
she had
torture
asked
in
this
his
question.
heart?
Rongxiu's
Rongxiu's answer was always very
and
brief.
even personally
He
sent
only
Nan
said
Yi
that he
to a
had
dead
something
end,
on Nan Yifan,
dying without a
which
complete
made the other
corpse in
party quite
exchange for
afraid.
Nan Yusheng's
But
life.
Chu Luiyue felt
In the
that
end,
something was wrong.
not long after,
Nan
he
Yifan's
died in
attitude
Peach Blossom Dock.
didn't seem to be purely
Nan Yifan
because he
knew
was
that
threatened.
many of the people
Faintly,
below had
there
ulterior
seemed to be
motives,
some respect
but
and
he
fear
couldn't
in
be
their
bothered.
eyes. The only thing he wanted to do now was to take
half-smile.
revenge.
Fear?
He has already
make
sent
people
Rongxiu
hear.
and Chu
What's
Luiyue
there to
pay with
fear?
their blood. Chu
Anyway,
Luiyue was
he had
speechless
nothing
for a
to
moment.
lose.
So
It
why
was
should he
really,
be so afraid of
although
them?
Nan
He
Yusheng
had
nodded.
always said
Then
that he
this
was here
time,
to avenge
the
Nan
blood
Yi.
debt and
How
reputation
could he
of
have
the Nan
mobilized
family
so
will
many
depend on
elders
all
without
of you.
Nan Yifan's tacit
The people in the
consent?
meeting quickly
Thinking of
dispersed.
this, Chu
Only
Luiyue
Nan
changed the
Yifan was
topic.
left in the huge
By the way,
room.
no
Nan
wonder how
Hutsun walked
Luo Yan
over.
and the others are
Master,
doing
it's
now.
late.
It
You
had
haven't
been
slept
3
for a
days
few
since the day
days.
of the chaos
chaos
you should
in
go
Peach
and rest
Blossom
first.
Dock.
In these
He said
3
worriedly.
days,
Previously,
Rong Xiu
Nan
had been
Yifan
staying
rushed
at
to
the
family
residence
overnight
to deal with
and
the
sent him to
aftermath.
stay here.
The terrain of the
originally
mountain
thought
range
that he would
outside
stay there
Peach
for a
Blossom
few
Dock
days,
had almost
but in the
completely
end,
changed.
he returned very
But
quickly.
fortunately,
Calculating
there was
the
abundant
time,
energy here.
Nan Yifan
With
had
the
only
help of
stayed in
Sans
the
and
family
Small
for a
Space,
few hours.
everything was quickly
When he
recovering.
came back,
Although
he didn't
Peach
even have
Blossom
time
Dock
to
had
catch
also
his breath
suffered a lot
before
of
he
damage.
summoned everyone from
Fortunately,
his clan
most
to
of them
discuss
had
this matter.
survived.
They
As for
decided to
Majin
attack the
sect,
Peach Blossom
they had been
Dock.
completely
Even if
annihilated
he was
in
made
this
of
chaotic
iron,
battle.
he wouldn't be
Even
able
their
to
previous
withstand such
residents had been
continuous
razed
torment.
to the ground by the
Nan
angry
Yifan
crowd.
shook his head.
On the other
I
hand,
can't sleep.
the Yu
The moment
residents
he
had been
closed his
very
eyes,
lively recently.
his mind would be
Every
filled
day
with
many
images
people
of
came
Nan
to the
Yi
gate.
and Nan Yuxing's
Some
face.
expressed their gratitude.
These scenes kept
and
flashing
some
in
wanted
his mind,
to enter the Yu
like
residence.
sharp blades stabbing
in short,
into his
they all
heart
wanted
again
to
and
follow
again,
Chu Luiyuan,
causing him to
After
bleed
this
profusely.
incident,
The
How could he
survivors
sleep?
of Peach Blossom
Nan
Dock
Hetian
were
sighed.
unprecedentedly united. They admired and respected
He had
Chu
followed
Liyue
Nan
very
Yifan
much
for many
and were
years
willing
and
to
knew him
follow
the
by her
best.
side.
Although
The
Nan
reason why
Yifan
they were
didn't
like
explicitly
mention
other
this
than
matter
owing
to
Chu
him,
Liyue their
he could
lives
more or less
and
guess some of
admiring
it.
her talent and
Nan
strength.
Hetian paused for
There
a
was
moment
another
and
important
comforted
reason.
him.
Don't
The
worry,
enchantment
family
of
head.
Peach Blossom
Although
Dock
that
person
person
is
is
not
with
to
a
be
layer of
trifled with.
God-destroying
Since
tribulation
family
energy.
is willing to help
Now
us this
it was
time,
completely under
our
the
chances
control
of
of
winning
Chu
aren't
Liyue.
small.
Chu
The
Liyue
corners
had
of
become
Nan
the owner of
Yifan's
Peach
mouth
Blossom
suddenly
Dock.
twitched.
The
His
enchantment
expression
of
was
Peach
a little
Blossom
stiff
Dock
and
was stable
sarcastic.
now.
Yes,
And the energy
he was
of
not to
heaven
be
and earth
trifled
was
with.
abundant.
The Nan
It was
family
the best
members
place to
either
cultivate
died or were
who would
injured
not
this
want to
time.
stay here.
Several
Before
god
Chu
venerables
Liyue
joined
came,
forces.
she had been
but they were
thinking of
all
finding
wiped
a
out.
place to build
Until
her own
now,
power.
not a single
Was there
person
any
had
place more
escaped,
suitable
and
than
no
Peach
news had
Blossom
been
Dock?
sent back.
You
Therefore,
could imagine
she went
what
with
kind
the
of
flow and
situation
took over the
Luo Yan
entire Peach
and
Blossom
the others
Dock.
were in now
With
in
the
the Peach
enchantment
Blossom
under her
Dock.
control.
She
This was
naturally
the
had the
warning
right to
Rongxiu
speak in
gave
Peach
him.
Blossom
If it
Dock.
was in the past,
These few days,
he wouldn't be so
she had
stubborn
already
as to
sent
go against
Sansan
Rongxiu
and a few others
but now,
to deal with
he
these
really had no
matters.
other choice. At this point, even if we don't do anything, he won't let us
They
go.
screened the candidates.
Most people in the Nan family didn't know that Nan
Those
Yifan
with
was
suspicious
actually very
identities
afraid
would
of
be locked
Rongxiu.
up and dealt with.
In their opinion,
At this time,
although Rongxiu
most
was
of the
somewhat
people
famous,
were loyal to the
he was only the
residents.
successor
Even
of
if there were a
Yintian
few
Tower.
suspicious
They had
people,
nothing to be
they did
afraid
not
of
dare
from a
to act
first-class
rashly.
family.
Sansan
Nan
had
Yifan
stayed here for a
deliberately
long
didn't say
time
so much
and understood
because
the
the more they
situation in
knew,
the city well.
the more concerns
Therefore,
they would have.
these matters were
Nan
progressing
Hetian
very
frowned even
smoothly.
more.
With
He
the
was
help
actually
of
very
Xin Yi
worried
in
in
his
his
heart.
They were
But
even
just
more
as Nan
efficient.
Yifan said,
This was why
they
Chu
had no
Liyue
way
had
out
the
now.
time to sit here.
I wonder how
and drink
Luo
tea
Yan and
with
the others are
Rongxiu.
doing.
She had
Nan
asked this
Yifan
question
frowned.
because
This
Luo
was
Yan
actually what he
and
was
the other
quite
three
worried
elders
about.
of the Nan
If
family
Luo Yan
had
and
also
the others
been locked up
betrayed
alone
them
after
and
that
said
day.
something they shouldn't,
Yes,
then
even
it would
with
be
the drifting
very
cloud pages
diagram
for them.
They had
If
not
the
been
Nan
able
family
to escape
members
in
knew
the
the
end.
truth,
Rongxiu
they
raised
definitely
his eyebrows
wouldn't let him
slightly.
go.
Yanqing has
time,
already been
he would be in an
interrogated
even
for
more
3 days.
difficult situation.
We should have news soon.
Not only would he not be
Chu
able to
Liyue's
take
brows
revenge,
twitched slightly,
but he would also
she was a
lose
little
his
hesitant.
life.
In
But
addition,
those 4 people
he was
are all
also
gods
worried
after
about
all.
the flowing cloud
It won't
flying
be easy
diagram.
to get anything out
Nan
of them.
Yixing was dead.
As soon as
That
she
thing had
finished
most
speaking,
likely fallen
familiar
into the hands
footsteps
of
came from
Rongxiu and Chu
outside.
Liyue.
Your
Thinking
Highness,
of
Princess
this,
Consort,
Nan Yifan
the
felt
person
even
who
more
came in was
uncomfortable.
none other than Yan
You can
Qing.
leave first.
Chu Liyue
I want to
noticed
be
that he
alone.
had changed his
He
clothes.
waved his hand
and had the
Nan
unique
Hetian
refreshing
opened his
scent
mouth,
of someone
but
who had
hesitated.
just taken a bath.
Looking at Nan
He had
Yifan's
specially
tired and
tidied
haggard
himself
face,
up before
he
coming
finally
here.
bowed.
Even
Yes,
so, there was
he
still
took
a
a few
faint
steps
smell
back
of blood
and
on
left
his body.
quietly.
It
Nan
could be
Yifan
seen that
let
the
out a long
process of
breath.
these 3 days
Now
of
he could only
interrogation,
hope that everything would
Yan
go
Qing
smoothly.
bowed respectfully and
Peach
said
Blossom
bluntly,
Dock. One
"You
of them
manner.
confessed.
Moonlight is
These
cool
words
as water
immediately
flowed in
interrupted
through the
Chu
window.
Liyue's thoughts.
Chu Liyue was
She
standing
asked in
alone in the
surprise.
room. In front of her, a black
Mobile
shield
users,
floated quietly.
please browse for
After
a better
the
reading
previous
experience
baptism,
from Love Network.
the rust on it had completely peeled off, revealing its bright and new appearance. Complex and mysterious inscriptions were engraved
Chapter
on
1920.
it, exuding a
Yes.
vast and distant
Yanqing
ancient
bowed
aura.
her head slightly.
Nan Hongyang admitted that they came here with the permission
still
of the
had a
head of the
dull and
Nan
black
family,
color,
Nan Yifan,
but it looked
deeper
Chu
and heavier.
Liyue was in disbelief.
This feeling was difficult
This testimony
to describe,
was fatal for
but
the Nan
Chu Liyue
family.
could indeed
Did
feel a
Yanqing
huge
really
difference.
pry open the mouth
Those
of the
faint
Nan
blue
family?
crystals,
She
after
couldn't help
fusing
but
with
look
it, quickly
Yanqing up and
disappeared.
down carefully
At
again.
this time, his face
Except
was
for
still
the
as
dense
cold
and
as ice,
complicated
and
inscriptions.
he was still as calm
Nothing
as ever.
else could be seen.
It was as if this
Chu
matter was
Liyue
nothing
stared
to
at
him.
the inscriptions
But
for
that
a
was
long
her
time.
eminence. The surroundings
Chu
were
Liyue didn't
silent,
think that Nan
and she could
Hongyang
clearly
would
hear
choose to
her own
betray the Nan
heartbeat.
family.
There seemed to be
Since
waves
Nan
surging
Yifan
in
was
the
behind
depths
this
of her
matter,
clear and bright eyes.
the people he chose
After
must
a
be
long
people
time,
he trusted.
she stretched
Then,
out her hand
since
and
Nan
slowly
Hongyang had
brushed it
spoken,
over the black
he
shield.
must have been forced
An
into a
indescribable
corner.
throbbing
No matter
came from
what,
it. That was her
celestial
eminence.
shield.
What method
She
did
murmured in a low
Yanqing
voice
use to actually be
as
able
if it
to
had
find
some
out
kind
all
of
these
reaction.
things? The
Besides
black shield
this,
in front
did
of
he
her,
say anything else?
under the inscription,
inscription
Rong Xiu
flashed
didn't
with
seem
light
to be
again.
surprised and
Chu
asked
Luiyue
lightly.
pursed her lips.
Yanqing shook her head. After
No,
the last piece
he
of
said
faint
that the main
blue crystals
planners
of
of
this
perfectly
matter were
embedded
Nan
on it.
Yixing and
This
Luo
name
Yan,
appeared in her
and
mind.
the rest of them just
This thing
followed
had
the
been with
order
her
for
and came
several
together.
years.
He didn't
And
know
only
the
then
details.
did she know its true
This
name.
was not impossible.
She had read countless
It was a matter
ancient
of
books,
great importance.
but she had never
The
heard
fewer
of this
people who
name.
knew, the better.
But this was not
Nan
what Chu
Yifan
Luiyue
probably
cared about
didn't
the most.
expect
that they would
At this
fail
time,
even after
what
sending
made her
such a
feel
powerful
complicated
force.
was the inscriptions
More
on it.
importantly, because
He didn't even
when
have
she
the
saw
time
the
to
inscriptions
escape.
completely,
In the end,
she
he was
realized that
captured
her
and
previous
interrogated under
notebook also
torture.
used this
Chu
language.
Luiyue touched her
Mobile
chin.
users,
If
please
Nan
browse and
Yifan had
read.
known that
A
things
better
would
reading
develop to this
experience
point,
comes from Love
he probably
Network.
wouldn't have made this decision. But there was no medicine for regret in the world. What about Luo Yan? Yanqing paused. He refused to talk. He was a
Chapter
tough nut to
1932. There was
After
still
Chu
some
Luiwe
difference
regained
between
her
him
identity,
and Nan Hongyang.
she had been carrying
Otherwise,
that
he wouldn't
notebook
have
with her.
such a high
Now
status
it was
in the
lying
Nan
in her
family.
interspatial
Chu
ring.
Luiwe had expected
She didn't need
that he
to
wouldn't
compare it
talk.
to know that it was the
Instead,
same language.
she was quite surprised
This made Chu
when
Luiwe
Yan
feel
Qing
very
asked Nan Hongyang
complicated.
to admit it.
Back then,
She smiled
she
and
had
said,
lost her memory.
"It's fine,"
and couldn't understand
since
the
Nan
contents
Hongyang
of
has
the
admitted
notebook.
it.
However,
It doesn't matter
when
whether
she
he
recalled
tells
the
us or
divine
not.
realm at
Rong
Lingxiao
Xiu
College
knocked on the table
and regained her memory.
That may be the case.
She realized
but his
that she
biological
still
mother
couldn't
is more
understand it.
convincing.
At that
Chu
time,
Luiwe nodded in
she
agreement.
vaguely felt that
She
something
pondered
was
for a
wrong.
moment.
But later,
I'll ask
various
him
things
myself
came
later.
one after another.
A trace of
and she
hesitation
gradually
flashed
put
across
this matter
Yan
aside.
Qing's face.
Until now,
She subconsciously
when she saw
looked
the
at Rong
secret
Xiu.
text on it,
Your Highness,
the puzzlement
that
and
place
doubts
is very
that had
dirty.
been buried in her heart
No
surged
matter.
again.
I will
This
accompany
armillary
you.
shield was
Rong Xiu
obviously
didn't
a
seem
very
to care.
ancient divine artifact.
Since she wanted to go,
and the secret
she must
text
have her
on it must
reasons.
have been
Chu
engraved on
Luiwe
it a
winked
long
at
time
Rong
ago.
Xiu.
Her
Then
man
why
was
did she
indeed
use the
reliable.
same words in her
Rong
notebook?
Xiu suddenly asked,
When she first came to
"Is
the
there any
divine
movement
ruins
from the
world,
Nan family?"
she clearly
Yan
didn't come
Qing
into
immediately
contact
said,
with such
"Not
content.
yet." But
Their
it was
men had
indeed
been
her
on high
handwriting
alert.
on it.
But until
Chu
now,
Luiwe rubbed her
the Nan
temples
family
with a
hadn't
headache.
sent anyone
Previously,
over.
she
Xiu
had asked
narrowed his
Rong
eyes.
Xiu.
Nan
And Rong
Xiu
Xiu should
also
have known
said
the
that he
moment
didn't
Nan
recognize
Yushin
the
died.
inscription on
Now
it.
several days
What
had
was going
passed,
on?
but he still
Thinking
hadn't
of
made
this,
any move. Chu Luiwe couldn't help but touch the space between her eyebrows.
This wasn't normal.
When the god-destroying
Chu Luiwe stood up.
tribulation descended,
In that case,
the armillary
why don't we
shield
ask
was
Luo Yan
completely
directly
awakened.
now?
At
Yan
that
Qing
time,
didn't stop her
she
anymore.
clearly felt a
She
burning
took a step
sensation
back.
between her
Rong Xiu
eyebrows.
suddenly sighed.
This wasn't the
Chu
first
Luiwe
time
looked
such a
at him in
situation had
confusion.
happened.
What's wrong?
It had happened when
Didn't
she
he
was
say
in
that he
danger
would go
several
with her?
times before.
Rong Xiu
It
leaned
was
back
just
in
that
the
it
chair,
wasn't as intense
holding
as
his
this
forehead
time.
with one hand.
At that moment,
and gently
she
rubbing
almost
between
thought
his
that a flame
eyebrows
was
with his
burning
slender
between her
fingers.
eyebrows.
His movements
In fact,
were lazy,
the force in
but
her
there was
body
an
seemed to be
indescribable
affected,
nobility in
as
his
if it was
bones.
about to boil.
The sunlight
But
shone
this
on
feeling
him,
lasted for
making
a very
his white
short
clothes
time.
look even
And
whiter
every
than
time
snow.
such a
He looked
situation
at Chu
happened,
Luiwe.
the situation
seemed
was
to be a
usually
warm
very
color
urgent
at the corners of
so
his
she had
eyes
never
and
had the
eyebrows.
time to study
As
this problem.
newlyweds,
She didn't know if there were any
others,
secrets
but
hidden
there
in
is
it.
no place for her
Just as
husband.
Chu Luiwe was deep in
Digression.
thought, the Holy
series
Sun
of
felt
familiar
bitter in his heart.
footsteps
Suddenly came
continue
from
at
outside
6
the door.
o'clock mobile users.
She came back to her
Please
senses,
browse for
put
a
away
better
the
reading
shield, and looked
experience
at the
from the
door.
Love Network.
A tall figure walked in. It was Rong Xiu. Seeing Chu Luiwe standing alone in the room, Rong Xiu raised
Chapter
his eyebrows and
1921.
smiled.
Chu
Waiting for
Luiwe's
me,
ears flushed
Chu
red.
Luiwe snorted.
Even at this
Of
time,
course not.
he still had the
Rong
leisure
Xiu
to
did
do
not
this.
mind. She
If she was not
subconsciously
waiting for
glanced at
him,
Yan Qing.
could it be that she
Yan
was
Qing
waiting
looked
for someone
down
else
and pretended
He
to be
walked
invisible
over and wrapped his
His
long
Highness
arms
and
around
the Princess
Chu Luiwe's
Consort
slender
were
waist.
newlyweds.
He pulled
The
her
two
into
of
his
them
embrace
hadn't been able
and
to
bent
be
down
alone
to kiss
for
her.
long before
Chu
rushing
Luiwe
here.
tilted her head
And
and
during this
dodged.
period of
She
time,
raised her head.
the two of them
and
had
looked
been
at him
busy
with
with
bright
many
eyes.
things.
Have you
Perhaps
arranged
they didn't
everything
even have
in
a
the Peach
chance to
Blossom
talk
Dock
properly
City?
together.
Rong Xiu
It was
pinched her
normal
nose.
for His Highness to
Of
be like
course.
this.
Are you still
Although he
worried
didn't
about what your
understand love,
husband is doing?
he understood His Highness. Chu Luiwe also understood her man very
Chu
well.
Luiwe certainly
so she
wouldn't
could only
doubt
sigh
Rong Xiu's
helplessly,
ability.
walk over
Last night,
and take Rong
he said
Xiu's
that
hand.
the people from
Husband,
Yuntian Tower
what are
would
you
arrive
talking
today.
about?
In the
Haven't
end,
I
they
been
did.
accompanying you
And
these
there
past
seemed to
few
be quite a
days?
number of them.
This time, however,
It's your turn
Chu
to go
Luiwe
with me,
stayed
okay?
in the U residence.
She was
and
deliberately
did not go out
teasing
to
him.
take a look.
So she deliberately
Everything was
softened
arranged
her
by
voice.
Rong Xiu.
Her tone was
She shook her
rarely
head
soft
and thought for a
coquettish.
while.
Every
I'm just
syllable
thinking.
lingered in his
Peach
ears.
Blossom Dock
like a
finally
feather
had a few
gently
days
sweeping
of peace.
across his heart.
I think it's going
Rong
to be
Xiu's
chaotic
lips
again.
curled into a smile
During
as
this
he held her
period,
hand.
The
Her
13
hand
U
was
residents,
slender and soft,
and those who had
when she
chosen to
approached,
follow the U
the unique
residents
faint
had been
fragrance
working
of
over
her
body
time.
drifted over.
However,
refreshing
the
the
damage to
heart.
Peach Blossom
Rong
Dock
Xiu
was
looked
too
at her
severe.
bright and
They
resplendent
could only
eyes with
recover
a smile.
part of it in a short
His heart
period of
moved.
time.
Okay,
It would take a lot of
wherever
time
Madam
and
wants
energy
to
to
go,
rebuild Peach
husband will
Blossom Dock.
naturally follow.
Unfortunately,
As he spoke,
those people
he
did
stood up
not
and held
intend
her
to
hand
give them the
tightly.
chance.
His fingertips
This trouble
gently
will come
rubbed
sooner
against
or
the back
later.
of her hand.
It's better to
His
do it
generous
sooner.
response made Chu
Rong
Lui's thin lips curved slightly.
She coughed and
A cold
gathered her
smile
thoughts.
flashed across his
Then
eyes.
let's go over now.
Chu Lui nodded.
Luo Yan and
I
the
know.
others were locked
She
up
had
in
taken
the
over
Peach
Peach
Blossom
Blossom
Dock. They all knew
and
the
many
place.
people would be
The
jealous.
two of them walked out
Instead
hand
of
in
waiting
hand.
for them to
Yan
secretly
Qing
make a
followed
move.
behind.
It was
The
better
three
to
of them
come
walked
walked
in the
in not
direction
now.
of the dungeon
Kill
in
the
the
chicken
backyard.
to warn the monkey.
As soon as they walked out of
the
the
next
courtyard,
day came quickly.
they bumped into
Chu
little
Lui sat
Hachi and
cross-legged.
Shifang. As
Who had just
usual,
returned.
she circulated
Yan
the
Qing
force in
raised
her
his
body
eyes
for a
and looked
major
over.
cycle.
He was
Then
instantly
she slowly
taken aback.
opened her eyes.
The two of
There
them
seemed
looked
to be
as if
light
they had just
flickering in her bright
experienced a
eyes.
catastrophe.
After
Their
obtaining
bodies
a divine
were covered
body.
in dirt.
I'm indeed
and little
different from
Hachi's
before.
exquisite and gorgeous
Chu
dress
Lui
was
clenched
stained
her
with
fists
mud.
and sighed
He looked like
emotionally.
he had just come
She
out
had
of a
the
quagmire.
Tianjin Yuan meridian.
Shifang always
Her
liked to
cultivation
torment
speed
the
was
vegetable
already
garden.
faster than most
So it was often
cultivators.
like this.
After
However,
cultivating a divine
little
body,
Hachi was famous
her
for being
cultivation
clean
had
and
improved
beautiful.
greatly.
Usually,
Moreover,
if there were a few
after
wrinkles
absorbing
in
the
her
energy
skirt,
of heaven and
she
earth
would feel
and
uncomfortable
converting
for
it
half
into
a
her
day.
own force, course, now that she suddenly appeared in such an image, no wonder everyone wanted to cultivate a divine body. Yin Qing was surprised. However, eyes narrowed because Rong Xiu and Chu It had been a long time since she had seen Little Bao and the rest. Shifang didn't notice him at had helped her in the dark during the calamity at Lingxiao College. Chu Luiyue was both surprised and distressed without seeing her. Little Hachi, now that she thought about it, what are you? It had been a long time. She knew that the two of them had gone out 2 days ago, and Lan Xiao, but she didn't expect them to come back in such a sorry state. She would have to make time to return to the Red Moon Desert after everything here was over. She remembered that the two of them did not have a divine body yet. Wanted to pounce on wondered if she would be able to help them refine their divine bodies, her appearance like she had helped DeBeo. She sighed dejectedly. Now that her strength had spread out her hands, and it shouldn't be difficult for her to help them. Master, suddenly, Little Hachi felt a faint wave of energy. Although she said that she was pitiful, suddenly looked up. Her beautiful eyes were still bright and sparkling. Knock. Even with such a dirty appearance, it couldn't hide her enchanting someone is here. Chu Luiyue stepped forward and gently pinched her face. Is here. Little Hachi is the best. Little Hachi immediately narrowed her eyes. She stood up and walked over to open the door. Although the dirt on her body was really driving her crazy, but someone to be able to hear this sentence, it was worth it. Nodded and then continued. Raised his eyebrows slightly. Family Shifang moved forward. Chu Luiyue frowned and also waiting for his master's praise with a look of expression was calm. Then he heard Chu Luiyue asked. Chu Luiyue held her breath. How do you take care of your sister together? Digression. Everyone clearly did the same thing. Please browse and he even did more than a better reading experience. Why was the treatment completely different? Little Hachi glanced at him proudly. Shifang was still too immature. It had been so many years, but he still didn't recognize his position. Chapter 1933. I was wrong. Expression instantly also felt wronged. His long and indifferent eyes narrowed slightly. Your sister usually can't stand these things. There's only a quarter of an hour. Look at how much she's been tormented. Chu Luiyue instantly understood what he meant. Let her do less of those dirty and tiring jobs. So family, he also tried to get involved in this mess, but he couldn't help muttering in a low voice. These two families aren't the only one who knows how to take care of those medicinal herbs. They haven't interacted much with each other. How could he not do this kind of thing himself? Chu Luiyue was more and more certain of her guess. Most of the time, that these two families had indeed joined forces. Little Hachi pursed her lips. Family didn't have any obvious conflicts as if they could drip water. They did this because the Nan family instigated them closer to her master. It seems that Nan Yifan isn't completely unscrupulous. At least he managed to get family to come to help over there. In order to rope in this ally, Little Hachi made a lot of sacrifices. She stiffly turned her neck, felt that it was a little ridiculous that there was an ice cube standing behind the Nan family was in the wrong. And had offended them first. Yes. Now they actually had the nerve to come again. The ice cube even pulled in an Little Hachi's gaze. 24 people from the Nan family came. The two of them looked at each other for a moment. There are a total of 8 almost fainted. There were 18 people from the E clan. What was she like now? But there were 10 from her eminence. Of them quarreled more than half of them. They hadn't been in contact was as calm as ever. Little Hachi originally all gathered to find an opportunity to get back confronting our people and knew that the opportunity to embarrass herself would not come. Chu Luiyue nodded, thinking of her disheveled appearance and messy appearance. She wanted to see who dared to bully her. Little Hachi was about to break down. These two families had a total of 18 gods. She had never felt as embarrassed as she did at this moment. It should be known that an ordinary first-rate aristocratic family I suddenly remembered that I still have something to do. Revered experts. I'll take my leave first. And they had sent so many of them to attack this and Blossom Cove this time. Her footsteps were hurried that their family's foundation was indeed very strong. However, this time, it was still unknown who would have the last laugh. Outside Peach Blossom Cove's barrier, the Nan family and Family E stood on both sides. There was a distance between them. The relationship between the two families was indeed delicate, especially at this time when they were all at Peach Blossom Cove. Other than Nan Yifan and Yi Wentao, the others were completely unaware of the alliance. Therefore, when the two sides met, most people still maintained a high level of vigilance towards each other. Nan Yifan and Yi Wentao greeted each other politely, and explained that their targets were Chu Luiyue and Rong Xiu. Then they began to wait. The atmosphere was tense. At the city gate, the group of guards in charge of guarding the city were all on high alert as they stared at the people from the Nan family and Family E. Someone in the Family E crowd couldn't help but whisper. When I heard those rumors before, I didn't quite believe them. However, judging from the current situation, Peach Blossom Dock has most likely fallen into the hands of Sheng Guanyu and his men. In the past, Peach Blossom Dock had always been a place where people could enter and exit freely. Yes. Also, have you all noticed that the barrier seems a little different? Also, The guards in charge of guarding it seemed to be very loyal and devoted. When has the Peach Blossom Dock ever seen such a scene? I reckon that the rumor is somewhat credible. I just don't know how they did it. Everyone was discussing in low voices. They didn't quite believe it before. But now that they saw it with their own eyes, they couldn't help but doubt it. These guards looked different from those who had undergone formal training. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell that they were a loose army. However, the aura of these people didn't seem weak at all. More importantly, their expressions were surprisingly similar. Their eyes said, "If you dare to come in, we will dare to beat you to death." They are really guarding Peach Blossom Dock. Yi Wentao and Nan Yifan were watching from the side. They exchanged a glance without batting an eyelid. They could also see the vigilance in each other's eyes. Before they came, they all thought that Rong Xiu would directly send his men to attack. These were obviously not his soldiers. However, these people were surprisingly united. It was as if guarding Peach Blossom Dock was their greatest responsibility. Moreover, from their words, it was obvious that they respected Chu Luiyue very much. In the entire world of God, who didn't know that Peach Blossom Dock had all kinds of people? To be able to command all these people. The means behind this was really shocking and unsettling. Yi Wentao put his hands behind his back, and faintly felt that things were different from what he had expected. If there were more people like this in Peach Blossom Dock City, then it wouldn't be so easy to take down Peach Blossom Dock. Nan Yifan didn't think too much. This time, he came with the intention of cutting off all means of retreat. Therefore, even if Peach Blossom Dock was difficult to deal with, he would never turn back. There was no turning back for him. He looked up at the sky and twitched the corner of his mouth without a smile. "We have been here for a long time. Why are you taking so long to report the news? Or are there people who are afraid and don't dare to come out? The Holy Son and Princess of Yuntian Tower are so cowardly?" A guard stepped forward and said coldly, "Watch your words." These two were not people they could offend. At the same time, the people behind him drew their swords and sabers. Nan Yifan couldn't help but frown. These people looked like people from all walks of life. Why did they seem to be so protective of Chu Luiyue and Rong Xiu? However, this thought just flashed through his mind. He reprimanded coldly, "I was just telling the truth. Can I do that? Rong Xiu and Shengguan, you killed my son, and the elders of the Nan family. Today my Nan clan will definitely settle this debt." All the guards looked at each other with a solemn expression. Nan Yuxing and the others had indeed died in their hands. It was reasonable that the Nan family would come to make them pay. After a while, one of the guards sneered. "Didn't they ask for it? If they didn't force and chase after them, Master, you wouldn't have done anything to them. They only have themselves to blame." Nan Yifan, Yi Wentao, and the others were stunned. "Master Yu? Did he mean Chu Luiyue? Did he mean that they respected and admired Chu Luiyue more than Rong Xiu?" At this moment, a clear and pleasant voice was heard. "Honorable guests, please forgive me for not coming out to greet you." Everyone looked over at the same time. Two people were walking out of the city, hand in hand. The person who spoke was Chu Luiyue. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1934. Seeing the smile on Chu Luiyue's face, Nan Yifan was instantly enraged. His only son had died in the Peach Blossom Dock at the hands of these people. How could she still smile? What was the meaning of this? Contempt? Provocation? However, just at that moment, a gaze filled with coldness landed on his body, causing him to tremble with fear. Nan Yifan subconsciously looked at Rong Xiu, who was standing aside, and couldn't help but shudder. A trace of fear grew from the bottom of his heart. Nan Yifan clenched his fists and forcibly dispelled these chaotic emotions. At this point, he had no choice but to shed all pretenses of cordiality with Rong Xiu. Rong Xiu's eyes swept over Nan Yifan and Yi Wentao, and his thin lips curved slightly. Family head Nan, long time no see. How have you been?" Nan Yifan's heart was filled with hatred. So many members of the Nan family had died in their hands. Shouldn't they know best whether they were fine? How could they have the nerve to ask such a question? Yi Wentao put his hands behind his back and nodded slightly. His expression was gentle and polite. Greetings to the Holy Sun. As he spoke, his eyes fell on Chu Luiyue, sizing her up and scrutinizing her. He had heard of this woman's name countless times, but this was the first time he had seen her with his own eyes. She looked no more than 17 or 18 years old, with a slim figure and a beautiful face. In particular, her starry eyes had a calmness that didn't match her age. It was as if these things in front of her didn't affect her at all, even if she knew what all this meant. Yuan Tao had a new level of respect for Chu Luiyue. A woman who could attract Rong Xiu's attention and insist on marrying was indeed extraordinary. In fact, Yuan Tao wasn't the only one. Family Yi and the people of the Nan family were now focused on Chu Luiyue. They were actually filled with curiosity towards this woman, who had risen to fame in the Divine Ruins world in such a short period of time. Of course, while they were looking at Chu Luiyue was also looking at them. The Nan clan had 8 honorable gods and 16 high gods. Family Yi, 10 venerable gods, 8 high gods. Moreover, the strength of those high gods was not to be underestimated. It seemed that the two families had really put in a lot of effort to deal with her. The smile on Chu Luiyue's face grew even brighter. Nan Yifan couldn't bear to see Chu Luiyue laugh. It was very dazzling. Amidst the strange silence, he was the first to sneer. What? You're finally willing to come out? I thought you were planning to hide in Peach Blossom Dock for the rest of your life. His voice was cold, and his eyes were filled with undisguised hatred. Chu Luiyue didn't seem to care as she smiled. She said with a smile, Patriarch Nan, why do you say that? Peach Blossom Dock is my territory. My husband and I have just been married. Isn't it normal for us to come and stay for a while to relax? Besides, we didn't do anything wrong. Why do you say that we're hiding? Nan Yifan's face turned red with anger, and the veins on his forehead bulged. This Chu Luiyue was always sharp-tongued. My son Nan Yuxing died in Peach Blossom Dock a few days ago. As the culprits, don't you feel guilty at all? Nan Yifan suddenly raised his hand, pointed at Chu Luiyue, and questioned sternly. Rong Xiu's face turned cold, and he immediately took a step forward. A powerful aura suddenly descended upon them. At the same time, a fiery golden glow flashed across his eyes. Nan Yifan, if you don't want your hand anymore, just say it. His tone was low, and his voice was cold, as if it was mixed with ice shards. Nan Yifan's heart trembled, and his fingers curled. However, he soon realized that he was too cowardly. For a moment, Nan Yifan was angry and annoyed. He had already planned to fight to the death, but when Rong Xiu spoke, he still subconsciously felt awe and fear. Nan Yifan was very embarrassed. Chu Luiyue glanced at him from the corner of his eye and raised his eyebrows. Nan Yifan's reaction was a little ridiculous. If he had more confidence, he wouldn't be like this. She took Rong Xiu's hand and shook her head gently, indicating that he didn't need to be angry with this kind of person. It wasn't worth it. She looked at Nan Yifan and said frankly, Master Nan, it seems that there is some misunderstanding in this. Your son Nan Yuxing didn't die in our hands. The one who really killed him was none other than the elder of your Nan family, Luo Yan. Nan Yifan was so angry that he laughed. Shangguanyu, do you know what kind of nonsense you're talking about? Luo Yan came with them this time to protect Nan Yuxing. How could he kill him? Even if you want to frame me, please don't find such a ridiculous reason. Chu Luiyue knew that he wouldn't believe her, so she raised her eyebrows and curled her lips without a smile. Countless people in Peach Blossom Dock saw this with their own eyes, and can testify. If you don't believe me, you can ask someone. You also said that this is very ridiculous. Don't I know that? If it's not true, why would I say that? Chu Luiyue's words made Nan Yifan waver for a moment, but this thought just flashed through his mind. He said angrily, Peach Blossom Dock is now under your control. Those people only listen to you. How can there be truth in their mouths? Chu Luiyue followed his advice smoothly. You don't believe what we say, or what outsiders say. Then, you should at least believe the words of your own elders, right? Nan Yifan's expression froze for a moment. What? It's literally what I said. When Luo Yan ended Nan Yuxing's life with his own hands, Nan Hongyang and the other elders were all watching. Chu Luiyue curled her lips and said word by word. If you don't believe me, why don't you ask the elders to come over and confront me? Nan Yifun's breath stopped. Chu Luiyue is serious. She really dares to confront me. Could it be that what she said was true? The person who killed Nan Yuxing was actually Luo Yan? But what is going on? Nan Yifun's mind was a mess. No, it's impossible. When he sent people over this time, he specially selected the elders he trusted the most to ensure his safety. Luo Yan couldn't have killed Nan Yuxing, and the remaining elders couldn't have betrayed him. Nan Yifun clenched his fists and tried to convince himself. However, Chu Liyue's words were like a thorn that pierced his heart. It made him extremely uncomfortable. Behind him, the people of the Nan family were also shocked and looked at each other. Their first reaction was, of course, disbelief. But Chu Liyue said with certainty, and even said that they could confront him. Who knows if you guys used some despicable means to force them to lie? After struggling for a while, Nan Yifun finally thought of a rebuttal and shouted, "They have already fallen into your hands. Aren't they at your mercy?" Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1935. Chu Liyue laughed when he heard that. I didn't expect Master Nan to look down on your family's god experts so much. Nan Yifun's face turned green and pale at the sarcastic remark. I don't think I need to remind Master Nan. Among the people who came before, there were 5 god experts among the remaining 8 elders, except for Nan Yuxing. Chu Liyue shrugged. Even though there are only 4 of them left, they're still reputable god realm experts. Master Nan said that they are at my mercy. I don't know if you think too highly of me, or look down on your family. Nan Yifun's chest heaved violently. He was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. Shang Guanyu, don't go too far. I'm just telling the truth. How is that going too far? Chu Liyue blinked his eyes, looking puzzled. Didn't you say those words yourself, Patriarch Nan? Everyone in the Nan family, you should have heard it too, right? Everyone in the Nan family fell into silence. They were extremely embarrassed. They couldn't understand. They were the ones who came to suppress Chu Liyue and the others. Why were they the ones being questioned in the end? Nan Yifun took a deep breath and finally regained his senses. You. No matter what, my son, Nan Yuxing, and the 4 elders of the Nan clan have all died here. Do you dare to say that these things have nothing to do with you? Today, you must give the Nan family an explanation. Otherwise, don't blame us for being rude. Chu Liyue asked curiously. When has Master Nan ever been polite to me? In the past, he was quite respectful and polite to Rongxiao. But now he was no longer like that. Why did it sound like he was very nice to them in the past? Nan Yifun almost couldn't breathe. He finally realized that Chu Liyue was indeed born with a sharp tongue. It wasn't enough to describe her as eloquent. He couldn't win against her in an argument. He would only make himself angry. By the way, since Patriarch Nan mentioned it, I'll just say it directly. In fact, even if you didn't come this time, we still plan to find an opportunity to pay you a visit. Chu Liyue raised his chin. Because we also happen to be looking for the Nan family to ask for an explanation. Nan Yifun almost thought that he had misheard. He had never seen such an arrogant person. They were the ones who had come to the Peach Blossom Cove to demand an explanation. Not only had she refused to give them an explanation, she had even turned the tables on them. What did you say? Nan Yifun asked almost subconsciously. Chu Liyue curled his lips, but there was a hint of coldness in his eyes. I say, Master Nan, you took advantage of the fact that we left the Yuntian Tower and only brought a few people to the Peach Blossom Dock to send people to kill us. After you failed, you encouraged the people of the Nan family to denounce us. How should we settle this debt? She deliberately slowed down her speech. Every word and sentence was crystal clear. Everyone's expression changed. Chu Liyue's words contained too much information. Nan Yifun's heart seemed to have been hammered by something. He immediately shouted out in a conditioned reflex. You're talking nonsense. Whether I'm talking nonsense or Patriarch Nan has ulterior motives. Everyone is here today. Won't we find out after an investigation? Chu Luiyue rubbed her temples gently. There was a smile on her lips, but there was a hint of sarcasm and impatience on her face. She had to admit that Nan Yifun's series of actions really disgusted her. Not to mention what happened before. Just the fact that he chose to kill Nan Yi in order to save Nan Yuxing was not something a normal person could do. Later, he tacitly allowed Nan Yuxing to bring Luo Yan and the others to kill her, and Rong Xiu to wash away the guilt in his heart. After failing, he pushed all the blame to others. Chu Luiyue was amazed. He actually had the cheek to bring so many people from the Nan family to the Peach Blossom Dock and say that he wanted to seek an explanation for the deaths of the Nan family elders for his son? She clapped her hands. Sini, bring Luo Yan and the others here. Yes. Sini bowed and turned to leave. Yi Wentao furrowed his brows and became vigilant. Sini had been following behind Rong Xiu and Chu Luiyue previously. However, until he spoke, he was just standing there without any sense of presence, as if he was invisible. Even he didn't notice this man's existence just now. Was he Chu Luiyue's subordinate? Sensing this gaze, Chu Luiyue's eyes turned slightly. Yi Wentao had just retracted his gaze. Chu Luiyue sized him up with interest. A person like Nan Yifun was nothing to worry about. In comparison, it seemed that family Yi was more difficult to deal with. Yi Wentao looked gentle and harmless on the surface, and was very elegant. However, how could someone who could reach his current position be a simple person? Not to mention, he had chosen to join forces with the Nan family. Chu Luiyue's gaze then landed on the two people behind Yi Wentao and smiled playfully. There were two acquaintances on the family Yi's side, Yi Wentao and Jun Jiuqing. She had long known that Yi Wentao came from a good family, but she never knew that he was from the family Yi. And Jun Jiuqing, from the looks of it, he could be considered a member of the family Yi now? Vice President, I haven't had the chance to properly greet you since we met last time. I didn't expect to see you here. Chu Luiyue said with a hint of mockery and sarcasm in her words. They didn't come with good intentions. Yi Wentao didn't care about his face at all, and directly stood on the opposite side of them. Digression, 6 o'clock. It will take some time to write about the bridal chamber. Ahem, mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1936. Yi Wenzhou was unmoved. When he decided to come with the family Yi, he had already thought about what he would face later. Chu Luiyue was Nan Suhuai's beloved disciple. If he made things difficult for her, he would undoubtedly offend Nan Suhuai. It was even possible that he would lose his position as the vice dean because of this. But so what? He felt aggrieved as the vice dean of Lingxiao College. Even if he lost it, there was nothing to feel sorry about. When Rong Xiu and Chu Luiyue got married, Nan Suhuai's actions were almost equivalent to confirming that the next dean of the college would be Chu Luiyue. What else did he have to worry about? Therefore, in the end, he still chose to come as a member of the family Yi. Indeed, I haven't seen you for a while. I didn't expect you to be so promising. Yi Wenzhou said sarcastically. From the looks of it, Peach Blossom Dock was really under the control of Chu Luiyue, and Rong Xiu didn't interfere much. However, these things were complicated. No one could tell what was going on until the last moment. Chu Luiyue nodded happily. Thank you for the compliment, Vice Dean. It seemed that she didn't hear the sarcasm in his words. Yi Wenzhou choked, then snorted and waved his sleeves fiercely. He wanted to see how long Chu Luiyue could laugh. Jun Jiuqing, who was standing at the side, didn't show any expression from beginning to end. When he saw the two of them holding hands, a dim light flashed in his eyes. There seemed to be some kind of inexplicable tacit understanding between them. When they looked at each other, they could easily understand each other's thoughts. It was as if there was a layer of invisible boundary that surrounded the two of them. No one was allowed to enter. Now that a strong enemy was here and danger was in front of her, she still looked calm and composed. Her beautiful eyes and brows were relaxed. Every frown and smile seemed to have a unique charm. However, compared to before, she was more gentle and charming. Of course, it was only when she was looking at the person beside her that she would reveal her little girl demeanor. She was like a dusty pearl that had finally blossomed. Jun Jiuqing looked away, and clenched his hands in his sleeves. He lowered his eyes slightly to hide the ripples in his eyes. Patriarchy, may I know why you have brought people here today? Rong Xiu's gaze lingered on Jun Jiuqing for a moment, before he looked at Yi Wentao. Yi Wentao smiled. Don't misunderstand, holy son. We're here today to do business with you. Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows. Oh, I don't know what business I can do with family Yi. Yi Wentao's expression remained the same as he smiled faintly. To be honest, we have our eyes on this Peach Blossom Cove. Chu Liyue's brows twitched. As long as the saint is willing to give up the Peach Blossom Dock, you can name any conditions you want. His attitude was courteous, and his expression was warm and gentle. However, his words almost made Chu Liyue laugh out of anger. So this family Yi was here for the Peach Blossom Cove. He sounded generous, but why didn't he ask if she was willing? Previously, she had chatted with Rong Xiu, and said that after this, those who coveted the Peach Blossom Cove would take action. However, she did not expect that family Yi would be the first to make a move. Rong Xiu smiled faintly when he heard this. The Peach Blossom Cove belongs to you. If you want it, you should go to her. Yi Wentao was stunned for a moment. He had always thought that most of the rumors were false. Chu Liyue should not have the ability to take over the Peach Blossom Cove. Rong Xiu must have taken action in the end. Therefore, he directly told Rong Xiu what he said just now. However, he did not expect Rong Xiu to be so straightforward. The Peach Blossom Cove belonged to Chu Liyue. The decision on how to deal with the Peach Blossom Cove was in Chu Liyue's hands. Yi Wentao's heart was beating like a drum. He had some understanding of Rong Xiu. If he was really the one who took over the Peach Blossom Cove, he would have rejected his suggestion directly. However, he actually changed the topic to Chu Liyue. Was he trying to praise Chu Liyue in front of everyone? Or, was the Peach Blossom Cove really taken over by Chu Liyue? Yi Wentao was not sure. In comparison, he was more afraid of Rong Xiu. As for Chu Liyue, he did not think much of him. However, if the rumors were true and the Peach Blossom Cove was taken over by Chu Liyue alone, then he would have to re-evaluate his judgment of her. However, Yi Wentao was not an ordinary person. After being rejected by Rong Xiu, he went along with the flow, and looked at Chu Liyue with a smile. Sorry. What do you think, Your Highness? Impossible. Before Yi Wentao could finish his sentence, Chu Liyue cut him off. What kind of joke was this? She had spent so much time and effort to take over the Peach Blossom Cove. It was not easy to turn the Peach Blossom Cove into her territory. How could she give it up so easily? Yi Wentao paused for a moment. In fact, he had expected Chu Liyue's reaction and attitude. If it were anyone else, they would have rejected him as well. However, he was not in a hurry. Why are you in such a hurry to reject us, Your Highness? Perhaps our conditions can persuade you? Chu Liyue narrowed her eyes and smiled. Oh, then I'd like to hear what family Yi has in mind. The Peach Blossom Cove was vast and had abundant energy of heaven and earth. More importantly, it was directly connected to the Gate Realm, and could freely enter and exit the realm of divine ruins. Such a treasured land was a priceless treasure. What else in the world could be compared to it? On the other side, the Nan family members had different reactions when they heard this. That was right. How could they forget that the Peach Blossom Cove was also a priceless treasure? They were only thinking about revenge, and forgot about this important point. If they could take the Peach Blossom Cove, then some people were tempted. Some people started to look at Nan Yifan to see what he was thinking. However, at this moment, Nan Yifan's face seemed to be covered with a layer of frost. Other than anger and resentment, nothing else could be seen. He did not seem to be interested in the Peach Blossom Cove. All his energy and attention was still focused on revenge. That was true. He was the one who lost his son, and had no descendants. Naturally, he was the one who was upset. Although the others were angry, they could not compare to Nan Yifan. Some people were tempted, but they suppressed their thoughts unwillingly. Even if they could defeat Rong Xiu and Chu Liyue, how could they compete with family Yi? Originally, the two families were on par. However, after the previous setback, the Nan family probably could not compete with family Yi. Just the goddess alone. They had invited 10 of them this time. They were determined to get the Peach Blossom Cove. Hearing Chu Liyue's question, Yi Wentao seemed to smile. The lives of the Holy Sun, the princess, and the countless cultivators in the Peach Blossom Cove city. Is this enough to exchange for the Peach Blossom Cove? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1937. As soon as he finished speaking, the atmosphere in the room suddenly froze. A gust of coldness gushed out, and the temperature dropped to freezing point. The air seemed to have frozen, and the surroundings were so silent that it was almost suffocating. What he meant was that if Chu Liyue refused to give up the Peach Blossom Dock, the family Yi would kill everyone in the Peach Blossom Dock. The smile on Chu Liyue's face gradually disappeared. Her eyes seemed to be covered with a layer of frost, and it was bone-chillingly cold. Family Yi, are you threatening me? Yi Wentao shook his head. No. I'm very sincere in talking about this business with Princess Yu. His tone was so sincere, and so was his expression. Those who did not know him would really think that he was full of sincerity. Chu Liyue sized him up and laughed instead of being angry. It seems that family Yi has a lot of confidence in yourself. Yi Wentao nodded slightly and said tactfully and straightforwardly. I never do things that I am not sure of. The people he brought with him were the most powerful people in the family Yi. Together with the Nan family, it would be a piece of cake for them to deal with the Peach Blossom Dock. He knew that Rong Xiu was powerful, and he must have been prepared beforehand. But this time, since he had decided to make a move, he would not allow himself to fail. Otherwise, none of them would have a good ending. He looked steadily at Chu Liyue. What do you think of my offer, princess? Chu Liyue's lips curved slightly, and her eyes seemed to twinkle. Her red lips parted slightly, and spat out a few words to express her most sincere intentions. I am looking at you farting. Dead silence. No one expected Chu Liyue to throw out such a sentence. She was simply tearing off the other party's face, and throwing it to the ground to trample on it. She did not give the other party any face at all. The Nan family was shocked. Chu Liyue is so unreasonable. The family Yi was also shocked. What are you talking about? Even Yi Wentao, who would remain calm even if MT Tai collapsed in front of him. After hearing this sentence, his handsome and elegant face twisted for a moment. He came from an extremely good background, and his path had been smooth sailing. When had he ever been humiliated like this to his face? It was extremely unpleasant to hear. It was extremely humiliating. On the other hand, the guards of the Peach Blossom Dock who were standing at the side all revealed looks of admiration. Master Yu is indeed Master Yu. How domineering. This was the way to deal with such a shameless and high and mighty person. Yi Wentao took a deep breath, and finally regained his composure. He suppressed his anger and looked at Rong Xiu. Saint, I'm here to discuss this business with sincerity. Isn't Princess Consort going overboard with her actions? Rong Xiu's thin lips curled into a smile. I'm sorry, Yu has always been outspoken. There's nothing wrong with her except that she likes to speak the truth. Master Family Yi is magnanimous, so I'm sure you won't fuss over such a small matter. These words made Yi Wentao unable to say a single word. His face was a mix of red and white. How exciting! Chu Liyue once again gave her man a thumbs up in her heart. Impressive. Truly impressive. What did it mean to win without shedding a drop of blood? This was what it meant. Every word was like a sharp knife, cutting Yi Wentao's pretentious manner into pieces. After losing face in front of so many people, it would be difficult for him to pick it up again. You! Yi Wentao held his breath, and had just spat out 2 words when he was interrupted. Master, they're here. Everyone looked in the direction of the voice. Sini had returned. Behind him were a few guards from the Yu residence, who were escorting Luo Yan and the other 3. Ever since Luo Yan gave his instructions, Chu Liyue didn't make things difficult for them anymore. Instead, he let his subordinates take good care of them. This time, they even changed into clean new clothes. From the outside, apart from their pale faces and dispirited spirits, they didn't seem to be any different from ordinary people. However, everyone present was quite strong, and someone quickly saw the problem. Why are they so weak? and there doesn't seem to be any force fluctuations on their bodies. Someone in the Nan residence asked softly. Weak. It was easy to understand. It was most likely Chu Luyue and the others who tortured them. However, it was really strange that they didn't have any force fluctuations on their bodies. Even if there was a barrier between them, they shouldn't be too far apart, so they should be able to sense it. Nan Yifan's heart sank, and he immediately shouted, Sheng Guanyu, what did you do to them? Chu Luyue said unhurriedly, What's the hurry, Master Nan? I just gave them some medicine so that they can stay here quietly. However, aren't they still here? As she spoke, she walked to Luo Yan's side. Luo Yan, Master Nan said that we killed Nan Yuxing. Do you have anything to say about this? Everyone's eyes were focused on Luo Yan. He slowly raised his head. Nan Yifan and him looked at each other for a moment. That cold and gloomy gaze made Nan Yifan feel a strong sense of uneasiness. Luo Yan opened his mouth, his voice was hoarse. I killed Nan Yuxing. Nan Yifan clenched his fists. Luo Yan, are you being threatened by them? Don't worry, we're here today to seek justice for you. Just tell the truth. Luo Yan just looked at him, his eyes cold and strange. I did kill Nan Yuxing. Many people saw it at that time. Nan Yifan, shouldn't you be the clearest about why I killed him? Digression. 7 o'clock. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1938. His voice was cold and mechanical. Only when one looked carefully and saw the hatred in his eyes would one understand that his words were indeed from the bottom of his heart. Nan Yifan was stunned. Everyone in the Nan family was also stunned. Luo Yan actually admitted that he was the one who killed Nan Yuxing? What else did he say? Nan Yifan knew best why he did it? Countless doubtful and suspicious gazes fell on Nan Yifan. And in Nan Yifan's heart, stormy waves were set off. Luo Yan's words, could it be that he already knew? Huge worry and fear surged in his heart. He opened his mouth, but it was as if a fishbone was stuck in his throat. Chu Luyue admired the changes in Nan Yifan's expression for a while before he said, Since everyone is here, it's better to lay things out on the table. Luo Yan, why don't you tell everyone in person why you came to Peach Blossom Dock this time? Nan Yifan's heart seemed to be clenched by something. Luo Yan, don't forget that you're from the Nan family. No matter how they coerce you, you can't betray the Nan family. He shouted sternly. Luo Yan seemed to have heard a joke as the corners of his mouth twitched. Nan Yifan, are you muddle-headed? My surname is Luo, not Nan. The corners of Nan Yifan's eyes twitched violently, and his entire body turned cold. Then he heard Luo Yan continue. Our purpose this time is very simple. To kill you. When we found out that you came to the Peach Blossom Dock without bringing anyone with you, we had this plan and came here directly. We originally wanted to get rid of you directly, but we didn't expect that we would be the ones who lost. Luo Yan's expression was indifferent, and his words were cold and clear. Everyone in the Nan family was already in an uproar. The version they heard was not like this. Who was telling the truth between Nan Yifan and Luo Yan? As for the reason why we want to kill you, it's naturally because of Yi. Not many people knew that Nan Yi had offended Rong Xiao and Chu Luyue in the Divine Ruins world. However, the Nan family and family Yi were very well informed. As long as they were willing, it would not be difficult for them to find out. Moreover, on the day of Rong Xiao's wedding, Nan Yi had openly gone to the Yuntian Tower. Although he had been rejected, he had done it too openly. It was hard not to know. And Nan Yi's sudden death some time ago had caused a lot of speculation. In the beginning, just like Nan Yuxing and the others, I thought he had died in your hands. However, he later found out that this was not the case. At the mention of Nan Yi, Luo Yan's expression finally changed. Heartache, pity, regret, resentment. He took a deep breath. The one who really killed Yi was none other than Nan Yifan. Nan Yifan felt as if he had been struck by lightning. He almost reflexively shouted, Luo Yan, do you know what you're saying? His emotions were abnormally agitated. His face was flushed red, but his lips were pale and trembling violently. Everyone from the Nan family was stunned for a moment. They didn't believe it either. Anyone could have killed Nan Yi, but not Nan Yifan. He was Nan Yi's biological father. Luoyan, are you confused? Second miss is the apple of the family head's eye. He dotes on her too much. Why would he harm her? That's right. Even if you betrayed the Nan family and stood on their side, you should at least say that there's a possibility, right? Luoyan, why do you have to do this? Everyone from the Nan family found Luoyan's words absurd and laughable, and they all criticized him. However, Luoyan only sneered and stared at Nan Yifan. That's right. I also wanted to guess that it was someone else. Unfortunately, your family head didn't give me the chance. Nan Yifan, why don't you say it yourself whether it's true or not? Tell me, how did you kill Yi and forcefully take her Yuan Meridian in order to help your good son recover his Yuan Meridian? Luoyan's words were full of hatred and resentment. And with these words, all the noise finally disappeared. The scene fell into dead silence again. The expressions of the people from the Nan family became subtle. Others didn't know, but they knew. Some time ago, there was indeed a problem with Nan Yuxing's body. Nan Yifan only said that he was injured and needed some time to recuperate. But there were actually many people who were secretly suspicious. Because the courtyard was very strictly guarded, Nan Yifan only allowed his most trusted celestial physician and his subordinates to go there. No one else was allowed to enter. Later Nan Yi died. Not long after that, Nan Yuxing's body recovered, and he even broke through. At first, they were only a little surprised, but they didn't think much of it. However, Luoyan's words instantly tore apart that layer of concealment and revealed the truth before their eyes. After understanding the meaning behind this, the sound of people sucking in cold breaths rose and fell one after another. Didn't this mean that Nan Yi really died in Nan Yifan's hands? The family head dotes on second miss so much. How could it be? Someone muttered in disbelief. Someone else had a meaningful look on his face. No matter how good second miss is, how can she be more important than eldest young master? He's the most suitable heir to the family head position in this bloodline. All kinds of chaotic voices sounded. Everyone looked at Nan Yifan with eyes full of doubt. Nan Yifan didn't look back, but he also felt uneasy. His limbs seemed to be numb, and he almost couldn't feel anything. Only layers of bone-chilling coldness surged out from the deepest part of his body and swallowed him. Yu. He wanted to speak and deny Luoyan's words, but he only realized that his voice was trembling when he said it. Luoyan hated him. He wanted to drag him into hell completely. He wanted him to never be able to make a comeback. That's right. He had always doted on Nan Yi. Now that he knew this, he naturally wouldn't let it go. In an instant, countless thoughts flashed through Nan Yifan's mind, but it also seemed to be blank. A crisp applause sounded. Everyone came back to their senses and realized that the person who was clapping was Chu Luyue. She smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. Master Nan, I really couldn't tell that you had such a temperament and means. You were clearly the one who harmed your own children, but now you have the cheek to bite back, and even made so many people from the Nan family accompany you. I'm impressed, I'm really impressed. However, if Nan Yi and Nan Yuxing knew about this in the underworld, they would probably hate you for having a father like you, right? Pfft. Nan Yifan's chest shook, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1939. He was so agitated that he vomited blood because of Chu Luyue's words. There was silence all around. The Nan family members were in disbelief. Even the family E members looked at Nan Yifan differently. Could it be that what Chu Luyue said was true? Did Nan Yifan really do those things? If that was the case, then Nan Yifan's reputation would be ruined from now on. Not only would he lose his position as the head of the family, but he would also become a rat on the street, hated by everyone. Who would dare to work with someone who could do such a thing to his own child? Who would still treat him well? Finally, someone from the Nan family stood up and asked, "Head of the family, do you have anything to say?" Everyone's burning eyes fell on Nan Yifan. They needed an explanation. Nan Yifan was filled with hatred. When he learned that Luo Yan and the others were trapped, he felt a little uneasy, but he was not really worried that they would choose to betray him. These people were his confidants who had followed him for many years, and they were the people he trusted the most. Moreover, during this period, he was immersed in grief and resentment most of the time, and his mind had been in a tense state. His mind was full of revenge, and he had no extra energy and spirit to care about other things. Unexpectedly, Luo Yin chose to betray him right in front of him. In front of so many people, he revealed everything. There seemed to be a ball of fire burning in Nan Yifan's chest, and it was so hot that his eyes were dyed with a trace of scarlet. He slowly wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and looked back. His cold and fierce eyes swept across the Nan family members like a sharp blade, and stopped for a while on the person who spoke. That person's heart skipped a beat, and he subconsciously took half a step back. Nan Yifan's eyes were too scary. You are all important people in the Nan family. Do you need me to teach you who to believe and who not to believe? Nan Yifan clenched his fists, and every word seemed to be squeezed out from between his teeth. He suddenly raised his hand and pointed at Luo Yan and the others. These people have been trapped in Peach Blossom Dock for several days. Who knew what had happened during this period of time? You don't believe me, but you believe them? A series of rhetorical questions shook the hearts of the Nan family members. Although what Luo Yan said seemed to be true, Nan Yifan's words were not without reason. Who knew if someone had done something behind the scenes? Nan Yuxing was already dead. Nan Yi was also dead. As for what the truth was, there were many different opinions, and it was impossible to investigate thoroughly. They were also hesitant about who they should believe. Chu Luiyue raised his eyebrows. Of course, Nan Yifan wouldn't admit it. Once these things were proven to be true, he would be completely destroyed. Therefore, no matter what method he used, he would choose to quibble and push the blame to others. Nan Yifan continued, If you still consider yourselves members of the Nan family, then today, follow me. Whoosh! Suddenly, a silver spear appeared in his hand. The spearhead was incomparably sharp, and the patterns on the body of the spear intertwined with each other. I'd like to see how long you can defend yourselves. Before he finished speaking, his feet moved, and he charged straight for Chu Luiyue. Silver-blue lightning swam under his feet, making crackling sounds. He was a god, and his strength was already strong. Now that he used his movement technique, his speed was naturally even faster. In almost the blink of an eye, he was already in front of the barrier. Soul-devouring silver dragon spear. Nan Yifan's aura surged, and a powerful pressure suddenly descended. Chi. A large number of barbs suddenly appeared on the silver spear. From afar, it looked like a piece of scale armor, and the scale armor was suffused with a purple-red light, cold and strange. It was obviously dipped in poison. In the blink of an eye, the spear had arrived. Everyone's hearts tightened. They didn't expect Nan Yifan to suddenly attack. Just as they were thinking about whether Chu Luiyue could withstand this attack, they were surprised to find that Chu Luiyue didn't move at all. She just stood there, her shoulders and back straight like a pine tree. A gentle breeze blew, and her skirt fluttered. Her long hair fluttered gently, and she raised her head slightly. She just stood there quietly, her expression calm and composed. It was as if she didn't care about Nan Yifan's attack at all. It wasn't just them. Nan Yifan also frowned because of her reaction. It was too strange. The distance between the two of them wasn't far, and he was already close to the barrier. Could it be that she was scared silly? Nan Yifan thought in his heart. But when he met Chu Luiyue's eyes, he realized that he was wrong. That pair of bright starry eyes was like a deep and calm pool, as if no matter what happened, it wouldn't cause the slightest ripple. Even the corners of her lips were slightly raised, as if she was smiling. Smiling? What was she smiling about? Nan Yifan couldn't understand. Chu Luiyue seemed to be hiding countless secrets that couldn't be understood no matter how hard he tried. Seeing him attack, she didn't seem surprised at all, and even looked like she was waiting to see a joke? Yes, that was the feeling. Nan Yifan's heart instantly burned with anger. Chu Luiyue's appearance and attitude. Wasn't she waiting to see him make a fool of himself? But what right did she have to do that? He knew that Chu Liyue's strength was tyrannical, far surpassing that of ordinary high gods. But she was still a high god after all. He had broken through to high god several years ago. Could it be that he couldn't even take her down? Previously in the god-slaying mound, he was afraid of Rong Xiu, but now, he had nothing to be afraid of. So he didn't hesitate at all for this attack. But at this moment, a tyrannical and flexible force suddenly stopped Nan Yifan. Nan Yifan was stunned. Only then did he realize that what stopped him was none other than the Peach Blossom Cove's barrier. The barrier that used to be fragile and chaotic, and could be entered and exited at will, now seemed to have become an iron wall. He couldn't advance even half an inch. Nan Yifan's fatal attack was fiercely stabbed out, but it was silently stopped by the barrier. The two forces began to quietly and fiercely fight each other. Because of the energy fluctuations, circles of ripples seemed to have appeared on the barrier. Under the sunlight, it flickered with fine and dazzling lights, bright and beautiful. Nan Yifan was stunned. His soul-devouring silver dragon spear was a supreme treasure. It was almost indestructible. Yet now it was easily stopped by a spirit formation. Everyone, if you want to take my life, you must first have the ability to break into the Peach Blossom Cove, right? Chu Liyue spoke slowly with a smile on her face, but her eyes were cold and fierce. Her eyes slowly and firmly swept across the crowd. I know that in the world of divine ruins, there are many people who covet the Peach Blossom Cove. So today, I'll be frank with you. The Peach Blossom Cove is here. Whoever wants to take it, feel free to come. Whoever can take half an inch of the Peach Blossom Cove's territory from my hands, I will admit that he is capable. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 1940. Her clear voice spread far and wide, landing clearly in everyone's ears. Many people were shocked. Chu Liyue was openly declaring war. Moreover, she was challenging all the aristocratic families in the entire Divine Ruins world. Did she know what she was saying? After all, Peach Blossom Dock had just been taken over by her. Even if it had excellent conditions in all aspects, it was impossible to prepare everything in such a short time. There were many people in Peach Blossom Dock, but they were all mixed up and had their own camps. Even if Chu Liyue had become the master of Peach Blossom Dock, how could she build up a powerful force that belonged to her in just a few days? Compared to the other aristocratic families that had been passed down for thousands of years, her force was simply too weak to withstand a single blow. She still dared to be so arrogant? They soon understood why Chu Liyue had such courage. Because in the next moment, she raised her hand. The girl's hand was slender and fair, soft and boneless. It did not look threatening at all. Then, she waved her hand gently, just a little. Whoosh! The enchantment of Peach Blossom Dock, which was faintly glowing, started to fluctuate violently in an instant. The sound of surging tides came from within. From this sound, it was not difficult to guess what kind of terrifying energy was contained in it. Nan Yifan's expression changed slightly. He had a bad feeling. His sixth sense, which had been honed by years of battle experience, told him that he needed to retreat immediately. But he hesitated for a moment. In front of so many people, wouldn't it be too embarrassing to take the initiative to retreat right after making a move? But it was this moment of hesitation. Boom! A terrifying surge of energy surged forth. A new round of even crazier strangulation began. Before Nan Yifan could react, he felt something tighten around his hand. He immediately looked over and realized that a translucent energy with a faint, gorgeous light had tightly bound his soul-devouring silver dragon spear. Nan Yifan knew that something was wrong and wanted to pull it back immediately. But he realized that he could not pull it back at all. Nan Yifan panicked. There was something wrong with this enchantment. However, just as he was filled with shock and suspicion, crack! The sound of something breaking could be heard. His heart shuddered as well. In the next moment, he saw a sharp barbed scale on the body of the spear shatter. Obviously, it had been forcefully crushed by the power of the barrier. Nan Yifan's heart was instantly filled with shock. The power of this barrier far exceeded his expectations. He finally realized that something was wrong. Seeing that the translucent power was still spreading along the body of the spear, heading straight for his face, Nan Yifan immediately let go of his hand, moved his feet, and quickly retreated. Crack. Almost as soon as he left, the sound of shattering rang out one after another. Inside and outside the barrier, countless pairs of eyes saw the shocking scene. Just like that, the soul-devouring silver dragon spear, which could be considered a top-notch divine artifact, was slowly being crushed by the Peach Blossom Cove's barrier. As the ripples on the barrier surged, the silver spear broke inch by inch and was finally annihilated into ashes. If Nan Yifan had been a step slower, he would have been in danger. Peach Blossom Doc's enchantment. How could it be so powerful? Someone in the crowd murmured in shock. They did not know that the Peach Blossom Dock had been rebuilt after its destruction. Now, the enchantment was covered with the power of the God-destroying tribulation, so it was naturally not comparable to an ordinary enchantment. Swish! Chu Luiyue raised his sword with one hand. He pointed to the front. Everyone please. Digression. Beginning of spring. I hope everything will get better as soon as possible. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.